What's up, guys? How are you doing? We're
What's
here.
up?
We're here with Pint and Brewnasty. Pint's a fellow Paladin player. Brew is our warrior and hopefully our main tank.
Yeah, it's nice to be here on Divine Intervention.
Yeah, you almost
You want
you
to
almost got the name
give
right.
us tell us who you are a little bit, Brew and Pint? Starting with Brew.
Yeah, sure. So I started off as a warrior in was it 2022 now, just on White Main, and found myself meeting up with these guys here in our guild initially called Skyline, and we've been raiding ever since, and we become good friends, and we play with each other in PvP, and now we're at a time where they announced fresh, so we're looking to restart and have a new journey on this fresh new server.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talked a little bit last time about how really all of us, Fresh was such a big deal to us because we were in a position where we just couldn't seem to find, like, we worked really hard coming back from sod to try to make white main work for us again, and just with like the state of the server, it just doesn't seem to work out. We weren't all going to get to play together, and definitely not in the capacity that we wanted to.
Pint, what's your background like?
I started 2019 as a druid, and then
Gross.
once
Yeah,
yeah
disgusting. Keep going.
yeah, and then when we ran through all the raids and all that, and then Psalm came out, and I pretty much stopped playing. And then after Psalm was pretty much over, I came back to this server, and I wanted to play something different, so I rolled a Paladin. I ended up meeting you guys in Skyline eventually, obviously, and now here I am.
Tell me what I didn't know you played a Druid back in the day. Like, how far did you
Yep.
get into it?
We got to AQ40. We pretty much had
So
AQ40 on farm.
you went like the distance with that thing. Why?
Yeah.
Why did you go with Druid?
It was also I wanted to play something that I've never played before, so it was a new
Okay.
class to me. So
When did you guys
And I
start playing WoW in general? Was it in 2019?
no, I've been playing WoW for. I got into vanilla right before, like a few months before Burning Crusade released.
Yeah, it's actually the same for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been playing for a long time, and I met a few more people in like Missa Pandaria, and that's when I really started kicking off and doing like arenas and raiding and doing like mythic raiding. And then I came back to classic because my brother told me to. So I never like played the actual like 2004 release or 2006 release of classics. I never had the full experience. I actually haven't had the phased experience. So I don't know what it's like. Even 2019, I didn't do it. I was in BFA during that time, so I didn't actually play phased release fresh. So this will be the first time around where I'll experience that.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
I think it's an experience for everyone. Just starts out in crummy gear, and then you gotta cobble together your clown suits to make something of yourself. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
I think it's the best part of the game is phase one going into next, because it's like the peak of like mixing and matching all your stuff to make it work. It happens throughout the game, but it's like at its pinnacle when all you have is dungeon gear.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're putting a puzzle together.
You told me before you weren't too excited about Fresh. Can you tell me about that?
I just wish they would have. I just wish they would have done more besides just re-releasing it again, like more kind of like Classic Plus. But
yeah, I think that's on the horizon. It's definitely on the horizon. I don't think it's going to be the Classic Plus that the four of us probably want to see. Yeah. I do wish, like, with this new fresh server, I see no reason why they can't. They have like the chrono boons in it. They have the new ranking system. There's no reason to have a debuff limit on the boss. Like, why just take it out? And then all of a sudden, like priests, like shadow priests and like warlocks, their curses are more viable, and like their debuffs are more viable.
Less reason to hate the Ret Paladins, dropping consecrates and debuffs.
Yeah, aura limit too on players. Why do we need that again? There's no reason to
Or
have
like
it.
a Mortal Strike warrior, even though you don't really want to do that.
Yeah, but like you at least could, like, it would be more viable. Like it wouldn't be in a place where you 100% cannot do it. So yeah, I would like to see like some changes. I know that phrase has kind of become a meme because of Blizzard, but like I just don't see any reason not to at this point, because it's not 2019 Classic. They're not bringing it back.
I just think small things could be like like faster summoning. Would be a huge thing. I think I was doing a raid last night, and it took like 15 minutes to get everybody at the raid. Just constantly helping people click and get other players where they needed to be.
Mm.
A guild bank would be huge. I think one of the big problems for the game for guild management is you have to trust one guy with all the stuff, and then if a guild bank, you have multiple people responsible for that loot. It's easy to see what's in there, what's not in there. You can deposit stuff, yank stuff out. I think that's better for a community than the current way of just sticking everything out on alt, calling it a day. That's something I want to see.
Yeah. And then every now and then that guild bank guy turns out to not be so trustworthy.
Yeah, I don't know anything about
off
that.
with all your stuff.
Yeah. What do you know about that, Lumber?
If you haven't stolen the guild bank at least once, you haven't really played WoW. That's all I'm saying.
I can't wait till your guys' old guild finds out about the podcast and that Lumber Mill in particular is doing it.
Yeah.
That'll be a great day. A great day on YouTube.
It'd be great engagement in the comments. Speaking of comments, I cannot find like discords for the new fresh servers. If anybody in the comments knows, please post those codes in the comments. I'm a boomer. I can't find this stuff on the internet by myself. I need help. So I need a young person to guide me. I want to do some guild recruitment, but I don't know where to post for that stuff. It's all a bunch of sod discords and current era stuff, and it's just not working out.
Yeah. Or if you're interested in joining the guild on Horde side PvP server, you could let us know. We're not looking to go too hard, but also we don't want shitters. So
we wanna press W. We wanna parse well. We really just don't want to waste time, and we want to have a good time doing it.
Yeah.
Not trying to speed run, just trying to get through the content.
So anyway, I want to direct us on to the topic. Picking classes. We have the accelerated timeline. The first one right off the bat, warriors. They're gonna struggle in particular more than other classes because they are so gear dependent and there's so many of them. But now they have less time to get those things before we progress through raids. So guys, do you have any thoughts?
I think there's going to be an absolute overwhelming number of warriors this time around. It was kind of bad in 2019. The cat was kind of out of the bag then, but now I think everybody and their mom knows warrior is the best DPS in the game. It's the best tank, and it's a load of fun in PvP. So I think any kind of person that wants to be the best at something, they're gonna want to pick warrior, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah, you could say a negative to picking warrior is you're gonna be fighting 19 other people in the raid, including the tanks for the gear
and the rogues and the hunters.
Yeah,
there's gonna be a lot of competition.
Yeah. And the priests and paladins for your sippy set. If you're tanking, it's gonna be pretty hard to put those together in the early game. And the flask set for the tanks is super important when you're trying. What's the first boss or the second boss in BWL?
Velistraz.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah. Velistraz.
Huge sippy set fight for warrior tanks.
Yeah.
Actually needed sippy set too at the start because you don't have the healing power to sustain it, right?
Yeah.
Right. The sippy set is it's your diamond flask. When you activate it, it heals you for
100%
25 or 35. Yeah, it has 100% spell coefficient. So if you stack on healer gear as a warrior and then pop that trinket, you get that much healing every time that trinket ticks.
And that it's called snapshotting, and it's unique to vanilla, and a lot of items used to do it, but for whatever reason in 2019 Blizzard decided that snapshotting is only going to apply to sippy set. I think there might be a couple other things that snapshotting applies to. Diamond flask is definitely the most important. So after you pop it, you swap into your tank gear, and that healing power is now snapshotted, and that every time that buff ticks, if you have 500 healing power, you're getting healed for 509 because the base is 9 healing every 5 seconds. Is that right, Brew?
Yeah, just don't get caught in your healing gear and then entering combat, and then you can't switch back.
Yeah, because then you're going to get one shot in cloth gear.
We had that happen to us in 2019. Our tank was lagging as he was swapping sets, and then Velistraz activated and just killed him in one hit.
So that's a big deal for tanks, but it's not necessarily a big deal for every warrior. So every warrior wants it, but not every warrior needs, because there are other fights with big AoE damage in AQ where warriors want to pop.
The damage bonus from the trinket itself is good. I mean, every warrior's going to want to use that, but then even in PvP, any warrior can get some healing weapons, put 55 healing chance on them, and then he's got a respectable hot that's going to last a minute on a 5-minute cooldown. Oh, is it a 5-minute cooldown, or is it 2 or 3 minute?
It's 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So to reiterate a little bit, every item in the game is warrior gear, pretty much.
Yeah, there is a specific use case for almost every single piece of gear in the game for warrior.
So fighting every class, like, that would definitely dissuade you. How do you guys think specifically the faster time frame is going to screw over the warriors? Like, ranking takes like a minimum of 8 weeks to get to rank 14. When does it come out in the game? Is it right after BWL or is it right before?
Before.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
based on the timeline, I think it's releases Molten Core and Onyxia, and then it goes to ranking, and then it goes to BWL.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is, because of the condensed timeline, warriors are almost forced to PvP. So you have to get ranking gear, because otherwise you will be fighting every other warrior, and it'll be too much competition on specific items that you want. Like, you say goodbye to Band of Icaria for sure, or Quick Strike Ring, or,
Onslaught
an
Girdle.
OSG. Yeah, like all these threat pieces, especially if you roll like Horde, the tanks need threat pieces. They need gear to pump threat. Because you don't have salvation, right? So you're constantly trying to keep up with the DPS that the DPS warriors have to contain that threat. Otherwise, they'll just have raid issues. So I really think the condensed timeline puts us into like you got to go full sweat, right? Like warriors really have to try and get every min-max they can, every piece of gear that they can get. And ranking, although it helps you, it does make you have to play a lot. Like, I think there's going to be warriors who are going to get burnt out.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that rank 14 grind.
It is at least a lot easier, and you don't get punished for taking breaks and stuff, but you have to go full ham for 8 weeks. It comes at a time, there's not a lot of great DPS gear in Molten Core.
I don't know if you have to go full ham for 8 weeks, because like those first 10 ranks, they're pretty easy. But then once you hit rank 10, between that and 14, like that's when it gets a little gross, where you're spending more than a couple hours a night, like cranking out honor. You're spending hours and hours at that point on a weekend in AV.
The problem is you have, like, if you're raiding with your guild and ranking, because of the economy, because it's a fresh, you won't have gold. You can't farm consumes and rank at the same time. Like, I'm telling you, it's going to be really tricky. I don't think warriors are going to have a good time. I don't. But I still think, like, if you love warrior, to go for it. But to me, it was like the first, when I heard fresh, and I'm a warrior, like, I played warrior, and I progressed warrior in 2022 all the way to now. I've been playing warrior since. And thinking of all the stuff that I did on my ally warrior, I don't want to do it. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah. So phase 1, you're farming out, if you're a tank, let's think about, like, from a tank perspective, and then we can go to DPS. But, like, if you're a tank, you're farming out your entire zero set, like your dungeon set 0. You're trying to get as much as a sippy set as you can together. And then you're also going for all of the threat pieces that come out of the dungeons.
The Valor set won't. I don't think that's going to matter. But the 0.5 set doesn't come out until AQ 40, so like you don't have to worry about that part.
But Prebis Warrior uses a lot of the Valor set.
I'm trying to. What part do they use? Like
the shoulders are pretty good.
Yeah,
because like head is like Lionheart helm. What the shoulders? Well, wouldn't you use the leather ones from Ubers?
The head isn't Lionheart helm. It's the Executioners, right? That's that 2% hit helmet from Strat Undead that drops off Baron.
Yeah, I thought the shoulders from Ubers were Abyss.
Yeah, but this is DPS warrior, right? But you're also got to take in consideration for tanks as well.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, so like DPS is probably, they're going to be wanting to wear True Strike shoulders, not the Valor set. And
okay.
They're going to be in a lot of leather shit. They're going to be wearing Devilsar gauntlets.
Right.
Devilsar gauntlets and Devilsar pants, like the 2-piece. You need the 2-piece to like make it work, right? To get
it's super strong, yeah.
Yeah, because you need the hit from it, and it also has crit. That is going to be insanely hard to get. That is a grind in itself in phase 1.
Yeah, I think I really think there's going to be people that are still wearing Devilsar until like maybe ZG. Can you replace it with the stuff in there, like those blood-soaked leg plates and stuff, or is it still just so far and away better?
Yeah, there's the sacrificial gauntlets, so that gets rid of your Devilsar gauntlets.
What about Titanics?
Yeah, Titanics. Those have hit on it, right? That's strength and hit.
I think it's 2 hit, right?
That's a blacksmithing item?
Yeah, but I don't know what phase that is.
Yeah,
5
I don't know
or
what
4?
recipe that comes out in, because I don't think it's in 1. It's definitely not in phase 1. So yeah, like if you're tanking or DPSing, massive grinds, and that's just in the first phase. Then when ranking comes out, your options are, I can either wait in line still for this gear that, you know, like is going to be heavily contested over, or I can use this time to make meaningful progression in my gear and, you know, like come out on top. And so, yeah, the accelerated timeline definitely puts more pressure on tanks and DPS to rank. And rank like 12 through 14, that's pretty tough to raid in and also hit your honor caps during.
Yeah, I think you're just looking at less gear from raids and more so PvP, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like it's time, but then it's also like, okay, but then you have like gear until AQ 40, right? It's like, you know, pick your poison. Do you want to be struggling for gear from raiding, but like be less stressed out? Or do you want to go ham in PvP, get your gear from ranking, and then be almost bizzed? You know, you're like ready to go for AQ 40 and then Nax.
Yeah, you'll be wearing that into Nax.
Yeah, people still. I mean, I still wear it when I go to Nax. Like the general or the martial pants, they have 2% crit. Like that's huge. That's so good. You don't see 2% crit unless it's a Nax pants.
So I don't want to spend too much time on warriors. I think we've done a lot of negging. What are the reasons to play warrior? Most people know that like it's World of Warriorcraft. They're heavily favored DPS meters. They're the best DPS in the game, best tanks. It's also, I think, the most fun because instead of a 1-button rotation, you have a 3-button rotation, and you're not managing a mana pool where you're sitting to drink to getting it back up. Part of the skill in warrior comes from managing your rage.
I think it's a factor of all that, right? I think it's the most basic, but it's the most complex like class to play. Like the warrior, you have to really manage your rage, and if you're trying to parse, that's like the highest thing, right? It's managing your rage, that you have everything ready to go for like the last 30 seconds of the fight. And that goes for every boss you're in, right? So it goes from trash pull to boss and then trash pull to boss. And then and for PvP as well, like you need to manage your stance dancing. If you don't do that properly, you'll just get dumpstered by other melee or casters. You need to be aware of everything. So it's a very fun class to play, and it's very rewarding when you have gear because you can one-shot people. Like I've had instances where I've been stun locked by rogues, but then I would charge in on a mage who is shooting at me, and I would one-shot them, turn around, and then kill the rogue. So it's very rewarding when you have proper gearing and you know what you're doing, which means you need trinkets and you need to have, you know, proper gearing and maybe some engineering stuff to help you out. But I think it's like it really is one of the best classes to play, and you'll have such a good time playing it as long as other people with you help you play. That's another thing.
Yeah,
it's a team effort. You got to get your ducks
in
a row.
Team effort.
With warrior, you could say like it is an investment. Like you're signing up for the struggle bus, you know, from day one, and it's an investment. Like it's the potential of like the most possible fun that you could have in WoW, in my opinion.
Especially when you start getting world buffs too. Like that just adds a whole nother factor to it. Like it's a completely different class when you add world buffs, especially with War Chief, with the Blessing or Rend. It totally changes how like warrior becomes the most fun thing I've like ever.
That rage management we talked about before becomes a lot less of a concern because when you're doing, you know, double the amount of damage, that's double the amount of rage coming in.
You can't get rid of the rage fast enough when you're fully world buff.
Just about every class in the game is linear in terms of its damage and its gearing and its buffs, and warrior is the one class in the game that's exponential. It just keeps going straight up. It's wild.
Yeah, so if you care about arbitrary numbers on like a third-party website, definitely go warrior.
We can always come back to these and like however we feel, but do you guys want to move on to Mage?
Yeah, sure. We'll move on to the second best class in the game.
I literally wrote these down as I came up with it, and it's actually kind of a good list. But we got Mage next. Your guys' thoughts on Mage?
First thoughts are, I just want to say I think most classes in the game have a bad time in Phase 1 and Phase 2 with gearing, but a lot of that gets alleviated in BWL for Mage for sure, because like that's when they get their Tier 2 and they get, you know, stuff like Mission Deer, and it really starts to come online then. Not that it's a slouch before that, but
yeah.
I think you're going to have a much easier time getting gear on a mage than you would a warrior for sure.
I think the value of a guild mage goes up exponentially in a non-GDKP server because they are fucking farmers and they can their ability to gold farm and also like solo the lower level content becomes super valuable, and also like their ability to like farm raw resources and things like that we need for like, you know, crafting those Devil Star gauntlets and things like that. Mage is like the goated class when it comes to AoE farming.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, even just like on a PvP server with herbing, you know, if someone tries to steal your herbs, you can polymorph them, pick the herb, and just like mount up and leave, and they're still in a sheep. Yeah, it's super great for, you know, collecting things. And
the DRs are so trash and vanilla that if they trinket that polymorph, well, you're like, well, I'm just gonna blink away and do that again.
Yep,
that is that.
I would say like grinding rank 14 is also a good thing to do with Mage, but I mean, you can get away with, you know, your PvE gear. Unlike a warrior, you know, at the best of times, you're probably going to be competing with maybe 3 or 4 other mages. At the worst of time, you're going to be competing with maybe, you know, 6 or 8, you know, warlocks and mages on certain, you know, off pieces. But for the most part, you know, a lot of your gear comes from those raids, and it's good gear, unlike warrior, where they're just fighting tooth and nail for, you know, certain off pieces that they just cannot get anywhere else.
I will step in just to say that I do think, without getting derogatory, that I do think that most farmer mages give mage a bad name. I also don't think that most mages understand how to play mage. And because a lot of your gearing, although it does come from tier gear, not all of it does. And there are some pieces you need to get from dungeons and from like UBRS or LBRS that'll help you overall. There's hit pieces, like hit percent is so important for casters, and a lot of the time they run like 8 to 10%. You're better off running closer to 16 than you are like below. I will also say that Mage has some of the highest damage output that you could have, like when you have the gear, like when you have the proper gear. It's probably one of the most fun classes to play as well in the game.
You know, when you play like a warrior, you're a warrior. You're a free warrior. That's what you do. But Mage, like halfway through the game, you make a swap. You go from frost to fire, and the gameplay changes.
Yeah, it is like playing a different class.
Yeah, you go from, you know, having to just spam frostbolt to now you're worrying about, you know, rolling ignites and whatnot. If you want to play like a really good class with just like a really laid back PvE gameplay style, but at the same time in PvP it's just a total terror, like Mage is where you want to be. And then, you know, Warrior is always going to have problems with farming, especially in an open world PvP game. It's going to be rough for them. But a Mage, like, you're just you have an answer for almost everything. Like, most classes kind of follow a script. You know, as a paladin, when I fight a rogue, I have to match his abilities with my abilities. And Mage, like, you can just completely rewrite the scripts on the fly. It's very interesting what you can do with it. Like, the skill ceiling is so much higher. Like, you're not really contained nearly as bad. It can take on multiple fighters at a time and win with no problem.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon to go like 3-on, you know, 1 as a mage and win. If you've got your engineering items up and you've got your cooldowns ready and you're in the right spec, like, you can watch some of those old PvP videos from back in the day, and their mage just laying people out left and right. There's not much they can do about it. And the damage output is also just really overwhelming. Like, if you're playing a class that doesn't have a big health pool, like, you could just die in a hit or two. It's over. You don't get to respond.
Yeah. Polymorph and Blink and Nova give you infinite resets in a fight, and if you're Frost and you have block, you have even more.
And you can do it all over again with the Cold Snap.
Yeah, and you get Shatter procs as well, which like really increase your damage up close, and then you can just reset Cold Snap, reset, and then get another Shatter proc. It's just what you can do with Mage it's very devastating, especially for Warrior. We just sit there in a Frost Nova.
Yeah, there's just nothing you can do.
So in regards to the accelerated timeline, you're not seeing Mage struggling that much. I mean, how many come to a raid? 4? They're not.
Yeah, competing. I think 4 or 5.
They're not competing for gear. I mean, like there's going to be some competition only doing like 4 lockouts of Molten Core and 4 lockouts.
Yeah, there's gonna be Holy Paladins trying to steal your Mage blades and stuff, but just you know, bully them.
For Mage, for Mage and I think for a lot of classes, ZG is going to be super important. and it's probably going to be like the first time you're going to be replacing a lot of dungeon stuff in ZG,
for sure,
more so than in the past, because you're not going to be getting raid gear the way we have in previous iterations. Because I think Psalm was even 18 months, so I think this is the shortest, right? Wasn't Psalm 18 months?
Well, okay, so it was supposed to be like a year, and then they just kept stretching it out, so I have no idea. It felt like it lasted forever. I think, I could be wrong on this, but I could have swore like just last year you could still transfer your characters over. I think Psalm just like never died. It just kept going and going and going.
No, the servers did end was right around the time I got on Era, and that was in Wrath. So it started like 3 months after TBC and ended like 3 months into Wrath. So it's probably about 18 months. Because, yeah,
okay.
TBC was, I think, June of 21. So that would put it at like February of 22, I think, that it ended.
What's next on our list here? We've got Warlock, the class I think I'm going to be picking this time around.
Why are you picking Warlock?
I just really want to complain every time I have to summon people to the raid. Or, I just really want to be able to, like, nag people into killing mobs so I can get soul shards,
For those of you who haven't played with Lumber, he refuses to play a class that isn't going to make him miserable. And that's why he's a paladin.
He likes being miserable.
Yeah. I'm a sadist in that way, I guess.
If he's not bitching about having like the weakest heals in the game and like the worst early tier sets and things like that, he'll be bitching about. I mean, a couple days ago, he was trying to figure out a way to make two-handed warrior work on Horde because he's just such a ret paladin that he wants to play the meme.
I'm pretty sure it's good. I think, we had that one guy in the comments mention about it, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think two-hand works. I don't think it's as good as Fury, but it's got...
You would play two-handed Fury. It definitely works. I've done it. But I've never done it on Horde side, and I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah. It works even more on Horde.
I think it has to.
Slam spec, baby.
Like, even if it's not like the top 1% of DPS, like, you're a warrior. Like, even if you did half the DPS you normally would do, you'd still be like in the top 10. Like, it'd be fine.
And then Wind Fury giving, or like you be able to like spam hamstring. Like talk about rage dumping and having too much rage that you don't know what to do with it. With world buffs, spamming hamstring to proc Wind Fury to get extra weapon swings, that's got to be just nuts with a two-hander.
We need to rename this the Warrior Podcast. Anyways, Warlock.
Warlock. Please. Please, you're playing Warlock. Why are you actually playing Warlock?
I said this in the last podcast, but like in a lot of weird ways, like it's really similar to Paladin. Like it's a class where you kind of tap one button, you have an assigned debuff, and when you're not tapping your one button or doing your debuff, you're doing your other ability, which is banish. And it's all about positioning, and you don't have to worry about mana, which I really like, which again is like Paladin, you don't worry about mana. It does great in PvP. It might be one of the best PvP classes, if not the best. I don't know. I think
it's the best. Outside of Mage, I mean, I'd say top two, Mage and Warlock, best PvP choices.
Yeah, it's very strong.
Mage beats everything, and Warlock beats Mage is pretty much how it goes.
There are some matchups I'm worried about. Like, I've heard that Rogue versus Warlock is pretty brutal if you're not prepared. But if you've got some stuff up your sleeve, you might have a chance. I've heard that Warlock versus Warrior, like, if Warlock doesn't get the opener, like, he's in for a bad time. Just because of all the fear breaks Warrior has. And then, like, another thing, too, is, like, if you play Alliance, there's half the population plays Undead, and they have a fear break built in, which, luckily, we're going Horde, so I don't have to worry about, all these little undead rogues running around, ready to break out of my fears and charms and sleeps. But yeah, I think it'll be a lot like what I'm used to, what I already have experience doing. Holy Paladin, like, you don't have you don't have really any instant cast heals, so it's all about positioning. And I think Warlock, much like Frost Mage, it's more about being in the right spot, the right time to start, pressing Shadow Bolts or Frost Bolts to kill the thing. That's what's going to get you the highest parse, other than your gearing and world buffs and consumes.
Yeah, the reason you only have to do one button is because Shadow Bolt hits like a truck, and Warlocks are oftentimes like the second on threat, and it's a problem for them because they're wearing cloth, right?
Do we have the Lumbotron up? I was thinking about maybe like just seeing what the Warlock gearing looks like, because I actually don't really know too much about it.
Yeah.
But I do know that Warlocks specifically need hit percent, and normally you would get that through Bloodvine.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you don't have that option, I'm curious where you get your hit percent from. because it's similar to Mage, right? So you're getting essentially the same stuff as Mage. So
yeah,
I'm just curious, like what kind of gearing they get.
Jamie, can you pull that up?
Yeah, I've got a. This is an older website. I don't think this is the most factual information. I think they've got a couple things wrong here from what I've looked through, but for the most part, I think it's pretty good.
I'm just stoked we're actually using the Lumbotron.
The Lumbotron.
Yeah.
It looks rough. I don't know if this is like there's 1% there. Some of these are random enchants, so there's probably like of the fiery damage or like of the hit piece, whatever that's called. We could also go to 60 upgrades here real quick.
Yeah, I'm not too knowledgeable on Warlocks myself, so.
Anyone doesn't know, this is a website called 60 Upgrades. It's a great way to plan out your character progression with gear, and you can even like type in a character that's currently existing on Whitemane or any other server, and then it will show up with the gear that it's wearing. It's a database where you can kind of just tell it what stats that you prefer or want. So like, if you want a warlock that's for some reason just only wears spirit, you could tell it like, hey, prioritize spirit gear in this section here. And it will, rank those pieces with the most spirit in order. Let's do.
Oh, is that ZG? That looks like ZG gear.
General Draxath.
No,
okay.
yeah, that's UBRS, last boss. Yep, that's Strat. The neck piece is Strat. Yep, Fell Cloth. Okay.
Strat. Where do these come from?
Yeah, I don't know.
Depths.
Oh wow.
Red with the Void. I remember having to help people farm that in 2019. But let's see, what's our spell hit? We don't have talents. Not that the Warlock has any spell hit talents, but
well, that's the problem, right? Mage does, and Warlock doesn't.
That is their problem. It's like is it 16 or 18 is spell hit cap? It's an absurd number.
Yeah, even here they have spell hit 7%, so you're missing a lot of percent. Like that's gonna be, you're gonna get a lot of resist.
I've heard from some Warlocks that they say like for every hit percent you don't have, you need like a crit percent. So when you do hit, because your destruction spells, you have a talent basically says when you do crit, it does double damage. So you're trying to use that crit percent to offset, your hit percent, because a spell that crits does double damage. It's like having hit twice with the spell. Yeah, it's rough all the way up until ZG. Like, and even then, you're wearing Bloodvine, you're not wearing your cool guy gear that you got in raid.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's like another thing that reminds me of Paladin is your tier sets are mostly for PvP, and in PvE you got to have a bag full of like this garbage gear so you can actually play the spec. But I also really look forward to being a tank in AQ40. Warlocks have to tank one of the bosses in that raid.
Twin imps.
Yeah, I was just noticing this gearing, the Rune Band of Wizardry. I'm pretty sure that's a 0.5 quest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that drops off. Yeah, that definitely is. So you go main circle, I guess. Or I have Ogremar.
I don't get why they don't release 0.5 for the jump. I think that was the other piece I was talking about changes I'd want to see on these servers. 0.5 is like super welcomed gear, but it's not even comparable to AQ. It fills in a lot of gaps for a lot of classes that will definitely be there, but AQ gear's like obviously so much better.
Like 0.5 is, it's still ball sack. It's good, but it's still ball. Like it has some good pieces, like the boots for warriors have hit percent.
Yeah, that's huge.
The shoulders as well, like those, they're just like beefed up. The headpiece has like crit percent. So really, it's just the boots and like the gloves that have like an additional crit. But for other classes, I mean, that's like Rogue's best in slot until AQ40 full tier, like full 5 set, right? So
it shouldn't come out.
No, I think it should. No, I think it should.
It's still really hard to get.
Yeah, it took me forever to finish mine.
And without GDKP, the gold, you're gonna have to sink every dollar you have into completing that quest.
My thing is, if you delay it and push it past BWL, that's what we're saying, right? It'll be opened up after BWL.
Yeah.
What's the point? Like other than for Rogue, but I don't see a point for Warriors at that point in time. Like the only class that would benefit at that time is a Rogue.
Well, I think the benefit that would come from it is that when AQ comes out, it's not like warriors, like DPS warriors are first up for those pieces, right? For the tokens that drop from it. So this gives you something outside of raid lockout to pursue to like fill in those gaps.
But you're also assuming that your warriors are not ranking, because if your warriors are ranked, you don't need, like, the tokens can go to the rogue. So it just depends on whether or not you have ranked warriors or rogues who still need like the token. It just depends. But I think it would be cool to see 0.5 at the beginning of phasing because it would bring in a little bit better gearing and better PvP overall. And then it might make Molten Core a little bit a tad easier just because everybody has a little bit better pieces.
It's already easy, it's people are gonna cakewalk through it regardless. And
I think it's funny they use Briarwood Reed for so long, right? Because what's the trinket in Molten Core? Is there any
I think
trinket
you wear
for
it
them
forever.
in Molten Core?
You'd use Toep, Talisman of Ephemeral Power for sure.
It's still biz.
Nah, dude, this is way better. I think this is on a 2-minute cooldown. I might be wrong on that.
What how much? What percent is it? We got to get you Discord Nitro.
I know. I'm glad everyone can watch me like just boomer around on my computer.
Yeah, we can hop off the Lumbotron.
A lot of our ideas behind what gear people want come from a place of like we all know what's good, we know what we want, but there are a lot of players that like also, I mean, paladins that show up to raid in tier 1 and tier 2 to heal, like
yeah,
you're gonna have people like that in every class. Those like kind of goobers. So depending on your raid environment, like you might not have the worst time getting this stuff. Like they just might not have a clue. But in an environment where like everyone knows what's up, like it could be struggle to get a lot of this gear.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do think that there are people who are gonna play that didn't get to experience it before, so you're gonna have those cases. But I think most of the people, this is the 20th anniversary of this game.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people know what's up and they know what to be gunning for. Okay, so Hunter, we got Hunter up next. Hunter also a very strong PvP class, especially in group content.
I also think they're kind of slept on in BGs. Like I think since their spells kind of had like lack the pizzazz of like a chain lightning or like a pyroblast, I think they kind of go unnoticed.
Yeah.
But that's in their favor though. Like they just sit in the back and just snipe everyone to death.
Not uncommon to see them with like the highest KBs in a BG.
Yeah. And then they've got some great tools for escaping, assailants, and their frost traps, their freezing traps, like that stuff is great. The ability to like reset a fight, I think if not Mage, then Hunter is the best.
Yeah.
I mean,
you have your
Mage
traps,
is obviously the best.
You have your different forms. You also have the super slept on Hunter evasion.
Yes.
They basically have Rogue's evasion.
Yeah, it's super good.
Yeah, Hunters also have like stun locks, and their improved traps are just really good for PvP in general. Like for Warsong Gulch, if you have a flag carrier, like a Druid flag carrier, a Hunter is your best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since Horde don't have freedom from Paladins, those frost traps just really are a terror for them. It's either you pop a consume or you just deal with it.
Hunter in PvE, not a very favored class. You're not bringing a lot of them. I think like the Super Sweat guilds bring 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
1.
the Hunter Polar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not there for your damage. You're there to keep the raid going.
You're there. Yeah, you're there to pull mobs to the raid, and most importantly,
skip
a lot of bosses in rage, and you're there to stop that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're essentially like the tempo of the raid, right? So like what we're pulling next, you make sure that the warriors are pretty much in line to pull for the next trash pack. That's really like the job of a hunter. But I mean, if you're in a normal guild, you can see up to three hunters, I would say. And the great thing about that class is that they can get most of their gear from tier gear. Like almost all of their tier gear is applicable. It's crazy.
And again, low competition for it. So
you're
gonna get fed at least your tier stuff.
And like this is kind of a pro and a con, but they're not gear dependent. So starting out, don't be surprised if like hunters are near the top of the meters because they just don't need gear. But as the game progresses, that's gonna, they'll go from being towards the top and now being at the bottom because they just don't scale like the other classes do.
Yeah.
It's also not something that people expect them to do, though. They don't expect you to be top parser for a hunter or a top damage hunter when you come to raid. Your job really is to keep the tempo of the raid. Yeah. And I think majority of the GDKPs or just like regular raids that I've been in, they also notice that. So it's not like something that people call you out and be like, your damage is terrible. That just doesn't how it works.
That's a good point.
I was gonna say melee weaving. Like, if you want to be the hunter who hits 99 parses every raid on every boss, like you gotta look into melee weaving, and that might be a bit tedious for some people.
Yeah, that also is something that's kind of slept on in PvP when like you're running up on a hunter. If you're a warrior or a melee class, a rogue paladin, running up on a warrior or a hunter, they fucking hit like a dump truck with their melee weapons.
Yeah, their melee's no joke. Like, if they've been pinging you from 40 yards away and then you're half health and close the gap, like there's a good chance they can just kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're no
hunters
slouch.
they're really fun. If I didn't choose warrior, I was gonna roll a hunter. So
Yeah, they sort
hunter is
of
actually
have,
what I played back in like original like vanilla when I was a kid.
I think one of the more frustrating things about that class though is they have a dead zone. Unlike in retail, if I can't, what is the dead zone? Is it less than 20
meters? I thought
10 meters? Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, if something's in melee range of you, or a little bit beyond that, you can't shoot them with your bow. So mages can find a sweet spot and root you to the ground where you can't melee them or shoot them.
That is pretty gnarly. 1 point for mage.
They feel like so they're like a warrior for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also a class that like if something gets on top of you and you panic, you're gonna have a horrible time. So you have to be calm and collected.
You're also very good at farming, and you can clear out Dire Maul for those the DMT buffs.
Yeah, you can make some serious money with that.
Yeah, it's very valuable.
With no GDKP, a player service, like if you have like your little botnet set up where you can summon someone to your fully cleared out Dire Maul and sell the tribute buffs, you're gonna make a lot of money doing that. So, and also you can farm just like a mage, like not quite as successfully, but there's a lot of solo hunter farms out there for gold making.
They can also level very quickly. You don't need a lot of mana. And you have a pet, so you don't have a lot of downtime. Warlock's in a similar boat. It's also a pet class, so very smooth leveling, not a lot of downtime.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like if you want to have like a very chill experience leveling, I think Hunter and Warlock are probably at the top for that. Something you could just like sit back and like listen to music and just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, one thing I will say that kind of sucks about Hunter is there's an entire raid tier where you just don't want to be there. Like AQ40, like. There's just not a lot of loot for you there. Like there's some trinkets you might want. Maybe you might want a Dark Edge if you're a PvP hunter, but I think for the most part it's just kind of a dead raid for you. So there's gonna be like a whole phase where you're just like kind of suffering for the good of the guild.
Also, the hunter skips there are like crucial. So
if you
don't know how to do that skip, you're gonna have to learn very quickly.
You could be the hero of your guild every week when AQ40
well,
comes out.
I will say that's more of a GDKP thing. That's not.
No, we were doing that in 2019. It was common.
I saw that more in Alliance.
That trash is super hard.
I mean, I saw that more in Alliance than when I did on my Horde character. Like I know Horde, they just go through it. We don't really do hunter skips. Yeah, pretty much.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, in our Skyline runs, when we had to do the trash, it added on an extra hour to the run.
Yeah, it was so bad. Yeah. And we didn't have a guy specifically fishing the lockouts for the right mobs too. So we were just like going there blind, and it'd just be like nothing but, what are they, mind flayers is what they're called? Just nothing but those.
Yeah.
Horrible time.
But that's a good segue into our next class, which is Priest.
Lumber's favorite class.
Yeah, the class I love to hate. So there's like a handful of classes in this game where I just feel like the game was tailor-made for them, and Priest is one of those classes. It's gonna have such a good time like getting gear, and I think it's the best healer in the entire game. But there's a couple of things with it. It has like 5 buttons that it uses to heal. It's got a hot, a shield, a group heal, a big heal, a quick heal, and a lot of these are very situational, and you need to know when to use them. And not only that, but you need to know which rank to use.
Yeah, they struggle by far the most with mana.
Yeah. Like Paladin, I hit 1 button and 1 button only. It's very brain dead. But Priest, like, if you know what you're doing, you can just do laps around people on the healing meters. You will be the guy who carries the raid.
Especially if you're good friends with all your druids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can get prio on the innervates from the druids, which gives you all your mana back, pretty much.
Yeah.
The priest tier 2 though, it's so good. It lasts all the way into Nax. You get a weapon called Benediction from Molten Core, which again will last you in the Nax. And then in BWL, and MC also has healing rings and healing necks and trinkets you'll use, and then and ZG and AQ20, there's also stuff there for you. It's a really good time if you want to be a healer. Like, I think Priest is the way to go, but you got to know your stuff. And I will say, like, some of the best healers I've ever had to play the game with or got to play the game with, they all start off as like Paladin or Druid or Shaman mains, and then they came to play Priest.
Yeah.
So it's if you want to be like the big time healer, like Priest is where you want to be.
Yeah, undisputed best healer in the game. Like, if you just in terms of raw numbers, if you look at their flash heal, or it's not called flash heal, but their version of the flash heal, they spec it down to 1.5 seconds, which is comparable to the 1.5 second flash heal that a Paladin has, and it's double the numbers. So it's.
But it's flash heal, but Paladin's flash of light. And
it is, same spell cast, literally double the numbers.
Yeah, and you don't like. One thing about Paladin is, you have to like cleanse constantly. Like, half the fights you're just cleansing. Priests don't have that big of a responsibility. Mostly they can dispel offensive and defensive, but for the most part, you're just jamming out heals on the raid all day long. You don't really start to get like real responsibilities beyond healing until Nax, where you'll need to like effectively tank some of the fights or CC ads so that the raid doesn't wipe.
Yeah.
Up until then, you're just kind of having fun healing. And then in PvP, if you want to play the healer, Priest is no joke either. Shadow Priest is a lethal killing machine. Some classes cannot deal with them to save their life. Like, they're just going to fall over dead every time. They just can't do anything. I watched a lot of Danny G Gaming, I think that's his name, his videos. He plays a Shadow Priest. It's a roller coaster watching him take on 2 or 3 players at a time and win.
We queued into a game, I think it was Brew and I, and it was like 3 shamans and 4 shadow priests, and then a couple warriors and like a.
Is your AFK out?
I AFK'd.
Yeah, we did eventually, because it's like it was a broken team between the chain lightnings and then all of the mana drains and soul drains coming out from the shadow priests. Like, they looked so intimidating, like, because they're just blacked out. Like, half their team was just blacked out in shadow form.
Yeah.
And there was nothing we could do. They controlled the entire, and they had no interest in flag capping either. They had no interest in actually playing. They knew what they were doing. They knew that they were farming us, and
they were playing team deathmatch. You guys are playing CTF.
Yeah, we were on different game modes, and yeah, I mean, I think they won from lack of participation eventually, the Shadow Priest just being the most annoying class to deal with.
Yeah, they're really strong in PvP, and you can get a lot of your cool like shadow gear from world bosses and things like that if you're able to do that with your guild. But they're really strong, and they have like a shield that like even my warrior has a mom, and I can't get through that shield. Like, they just take so much damage, and then what they do is they just sit there and drain your life. Like, literally.
Yeah.
And they have so much utility and so much, like, they can fear you. They can stun lock you with I think they have a spell that can stun lock you, and then they can
at range. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they can mind blast you and then drain life you. It's pretty lethal. Like, they can really like fuck you up.
They also have a mind control spell where they can grab another player and effectively CC them. But unlike another CC, they actually control your guys, so they can like move you around. So they can jump you off cliffs to your death, or if you're trying to get on the boat at Booty Bay or like wherever you are, they could seriously harass you with that. And there's not much recourse that you have. I was gonna say, I can't count the number of times I've been like trying to get on the boat, and then all of a sudden some priest on the boat MCs me and just drops me off into the water right before that thing's about to take off, and then I gotta wait like another 5 minutes. And God help me if that guy's just sitting on the boat all day. Like, that's what he does for fun.
Yeah,
People do it.
Yeah, they do. It's a perfect class to grief for sure. It used to be the main class to grief, right? Because you could dispel buffs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, dispel world buffs was the meta for a while.
Yeah.
2019, they were absolutely toxic. They were menaces.
Also, if you roll a dwarf priest, that makes you all the more valuable because you get fear ward.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's good. Good point.
Yeah. What are on the horde side? What's the racial? I think it's a
Devouring Plague for undead. I don't remember the one that Troll has.
If you don't know, in Vanilla WoW, priests also have their own racial ability. So depending upon what, could we pull that up on the Lumbotron? The priest.
Hang on, let me
racials?
pull it up.
Yeah, each race has their own priest ability. I'll flip over and see what he's got so far.
I've got
I
it.
think this is it. Yeah, here you go.
So dwarf priests get Desperate Prayer, which instantly heals the caster for about 1500 healing on a 10-minute cooldown, and the most important is Fear Ward. This makes a friendly target immune against fear, the next fear that's used on them. Alliance really struggles with fear effects in raid. They don't have shamans who have tremor totems, which break fears. So, I've been in this situation before where your raid doesn't have a single dwarf priest, and anytime the boss sends out a fear, everyone's just scrambling all over the room, including the main tank.
Chaos.
It's brutal.
This is called stance dancing. Your warrior will have to do this if you don't have Fear Ward.
I would say the majority of our raids have been without a dwarf priest.
Yeah. Desperate Prayer, same thing. Feedback.
What's feedback do?
I don't remember. I don't think I've ever seen this used. Priest becomes surrounded with anti-magic energy. Any successful spell cast against the priest will burn 105 of the attacker's mana, causing 1 shadow damage for each point of mana burned. Last 15 seconds.
Well, if you're a
didn't
human
even know that
shadow
was a
priest, I
thing.
guess that's good in PvP. Like,
I
I can see
don't-
that being a good matchup against, like,
Fear Ward's still gonna
Paladin.
be better. Yeah. Even in PvP. it's just-
Yeah, no,
chucking
Fear Ward's
that on
definitely going to be better. Keeping that and your shield up top priority, and like you're taken care of. You're pretty well. Both of those combined is almost a pally bubble.
Star Shards, I remember this. Rain Star Shards down on the enemy target's head, causing 936 arcane damage over 6 seconds.
It's a
That's
channel.
pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie. Putting a dot on something like a rogue from range is pretty good, but it's not Fear Ward.
What's
You've
the
got
Loon's
Aloon's
Grace?
Grace. Reduces range damage taken by 95 and increases chance to dodge by 10% for 15 seconds. It's okay. 10% dodge is something to sneeze at, but I mean, it's definitely good. I mean, there's no
I think
reason
they're
not
good
to
for
use it.
PvP.
Yeah, PvE, you're never gonna use that. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Same thing with Star Shards.
Yeah, it seems like it could be cool in PvP playing Night Elf.
Undead, touch of weakness. Next melee attack on the caster will cause 64 shadow damage. Reduce the damage caused by the attacker for 2 minutes. Seems all right. I mean, you're already so tanky as a Shadow Priest. I don't know how much value you get out of that. The Devouring Plague afflicts the target with a disease that causes 904 shadow damage over 24 seconds. Damage caused by the Devouring Plague heals the caster. Seems pretty good.
Yeah,
Like a life drain ability, and you already have a life drain.
and it gives you extra healing.
And then Troll, Hex of Weakness, weakens the target enemy, reducing damage caused by 20 for 2 minutes. And then Shadow Guard, caster surrounded by shadows. When a spell, melee, or ranged attack hits the caster, the attacker will be struck for 116 shadow damage. Attackers can only be damaged once every few seconds. The damage causes no threat. 3 charges last 10 minutes. So you basically get Shaman's Lightning Shield.
That's sick.
Troll
Yeah.
racial is not bad for casting. It's like PvE related though.
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe in the comments tell us what they think about what the best Horde Shadow Priest
yeah. I
is.
think PvE.
I'm pretty sure it's Undead.
Oh, for Shadow, it's probably
Yeah.
Undead.
Yeah, poor horde priests. They just get stacked into the same group, and they cast renew and flash heal and raids. And the priests in alliance get to go in their own melee groups and cast prayer of healing and get top of the charts. That's what happens when you have chain heal on Shaman. It just overpowers the priests. They're
Damn.
more viable. They're more. I guess you could say they're more beneficial to the melee because of their totems. So the priests get cucked.
I didn't realize that Horde stacked the raid differently because of Shaman. That's super interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either.
Yeah, at least from the raids that I've been in, the priests usually sit in the same group, or they go in a group with like some of the casters. And since you need shamans in every melee group, right? So if you're running heavy melee, you want totems down for every melee group. That's why priests usually get stuck together, and then what they do is they just bubble tanks and put renews and flash heal. Not necessarily prayer healing. They don't use it anymore. Sometimes they do, but not all the time. It's not like Alliance. Like if you're rolling Alliance on this fresh, you'd be expected to be in your own melee group and casting prayer of healing. If you're not doing that, you'll probably get removed. That's just what it is.
Well, yeah, that's a juicy tip about the Horde and Alliance. I had no idea. Yeah, I think to summarize Priest, big dick heals and seriously terrifying in PvP if you can get the gear for Shadow. as the game progresses, that becomes like a more viable option for you.
Shadow, all the meme classes are kind of like this, where if you play something that's off spec or not really appreciated in PvE context, you got to go rank 14. I think, especially Shadow Priests. That set is super good for them.
Yeah, I think like that's the good thing about Priest too, right? Like you can go rank 14 and get value pieces from it. You can get really good healing gear from going ranking, and you can also get I mean, I won't say biz for PvP, but it's definitely really good, like the rank 13 gear for Priest. Yeah. But in terms of gearing as well for a Priest, like it depends what you're rolling. Like if you're going holy or discipline. Discipline is typically for like PI and for faster raid teams, because you want to give PI to either like your best caster in the group, or maybe you want to give it to your tank before he uses his sippy set, so he gets a little bit of extra healing power. But priests really should focus, at least when they're doing their pre-biz into their raiding, should focus on healing power, right? And then learning how to downscale a lot of their talents, because they should not be using max rank. Like you just don't have the mana pool for it. Yeah. And you also just like you as soon as you get like a really good healing power, like downscaling it'll still carry your heals. So you don't need to really worry about using your max rank. And I think that if you're gonna heal, like you should just go holy for the start. So just go holy and down rank, and then later on, if you want to dabble in discipline, go ahead. And then obviously PvP is just strictly like Shadow Priest just is beast.
Yeah, Priest in PvP feels kind of like Hunter, where like it's just nobody really talks about it. It's just a thing, but it's definitely good. It's just I don't know. Yeah, a good disc Priest, they're a nuisance to kill in a BG, especially if they have people peeling for them.
I think we've exhausted our bucket of knowledge on the Priest. We can move on to Druid.
Man, what is there to say about Druid? I'm kind of a negative Nancy about this.
Earlier today, you talked me out of playing Druid for the fresh, because I watched some YouTube videos of people doing some awesome shit on Druid, which you're capable of doing in that class.
I am a total Druid hater.
Here's what I like about Druid. You get to pick your own fights like a rogue in like a world PvP scenario.
That is true.
You have the stun of a paladin, right? You get your bear stun.
Yes.
You have the charge of a warrior. If you're low on mana, you just go into fucking bear, and now you don't care about mana anymore. You phase instantly, right? Instant phases. Not on the GCD, so it does cost mana to phase, but you can phase, roll a hot, and then go into bear. Very common strategy for a druid and tanking and in PvP. Right. If you get bored, like I feel like you'll never get bored. Really good at farming because you have access to parts of the map that like everyone else doesn't have access to. Because you can breathe and swim insanely fast underwater. So you're swimming through the water and you're looting all of the mining nodes and the herbalism nodes along the coast that other people like can't touch unless they have like water breathing. And
that's a serious deal in Ashara. Like it's an actual thing. You can make a ton of money doing that.
Yeah, that was my my favorite thing about maining a druid when I played a druid with that.
So in the context of like a no GDKP fresh server,
there's not going to be any bots out there. I would bet money there's not going to be a single druid bot just farming that stuff out in the water.
But yeah, so great farming ability, and I just feel like it's a class that like you'll never get bored with. Druids are the best flag carriers in the game because their phasing breaks all roots. So like Novas.
Also polymorphs.
Yeah, polymorphs. Yeah, yep. So if you get poly, yeah. So you can break out of like the majority of the CCs in the game just by changing your forms. And
yeah, you can get away from a warrior just by shapeshifting because hamstring gets removed when you change forms.
Yeah.
A druid with a FAPS cannot be stopped. It's wild.
Just they're going to get on the other side. It now becomes a game of we need to get a group together to go kill that guy.
Yeah, or like you have to use a rocket helm and like make sure nobody else attacks him while he's stunned.
Yeah, I've been in Warsong Gulches where it didn't matter what the other team was doing. It didn't matter how good or how bad they were, because like their Druid was just the one winning the game every single time, and you'd keep queuing into these guys. Like
If you keep casting Fairy Fire on rogues, it keeps them out of stealth too, so that's also nice.
Yeah, I've had Warsong Gulch games where we're just bodying the enemy team, just they can't get a single kill in, but we cannot catch that Druid. He knows all the jumps, he knows all the tricks, he's got a bag full of faps. You're not getting him. let me just go on my hate spiel. So like, okay, we know that Warrior's the best tank in the game, but that doesn't mean Druid isn't also a tank. It can tank, but it's got some problems. So like, if you want to be like the best tank you could possibly be, it's like, why didn't you just go Warrior? Yeah. And then for DPS, Druid's also not a joke. Feral is also a viable DPS, but why didn't you just play a rogue? Because they're going to do more damage than you. And then when we get to healing, it's like, okay, Druid's not the worst. Well, actually, it is the worst healer, but I mean, if you wanted to heal, why did you pick Druid? And then we get to like the fourth kind of like the fourth unwritten spec, which is I guess actually Feral's kind of the fourth unwritten spec, but that fourth talent tree of you're a caster. You're not a mage, you're not a warlock, you never will be. There's nothing you can do to even ape what those classes can do. So like it literally suffers from the jack of all trades syndrome so hard. It's not even funny.
Yeah,
like with Paladin,
the hybrid tax they call it.
Yeah, with Paladin, like I guess on the flip side is like even though you're one of the best healers, you can't tank and you can't DPS. At least Druid can. So, like, if you had to play one character only for the rest of your life, like Druid might be the way you want to go. And then in PvP, like, yeah, there's nothing that can carry a flag like a Druid. But in open world PvP, the thing I hate about them is the class is a hit and run class, and you need a lot of room and you need a lot of privacy. You don't want third parties showing up to your gank, because you just don't have lethality like any other class. You have to slowly sandpaper people to death, and that takes time. Not that you can't do that, I mean there's plenty of awesome PvP videos out there. Druid's just like kiting 2 or 3 players at a time and simultaneously killing them both, but these are very long protracted engagements, and the PvP in vanilla tends to be very, very quick, and ended in a few globals. So
they just don't have
just
the burst. They're a jousting class. Like someone playing like a deep ret paladin for some reason.
Or like a shaman that just hits 2 buttons and you die,
I think Druid is like really good for people who like to do solo content, I would say. People who like to have a challenge for themselves, because I have a friend who plays Druid and like he's leveled maybe 3 or 4 Druids. He's done it on hardcore, he's done it on normal. So people who kind of like to play on their time, not necessarily in group content, they find it challenging, so they enjoy it. And I think, if you like playing that way, that's fine. But in terms of, like, they really do get screwed over by the debuff limit. Because I think Druids could actually be viable healers if they were able to spam rejuve on the raid. Like, bear tanks they're really viable, and the good thing about them is that like their gearing is completely separate from warrior tanks. So they're not stealing pieces from your main tank, or if your Druid's the main tank. They're completely separate in terms of gearing. And if you don't mind farming pummelers, like that's the other thing. If you can get rid of if you can put it into the Druid class, like the ability to increase your attack speed, maybe not like for 30 seconds, because that would be a little OP to have that, but maybe like on a minute cooldown where you can increase it for 10 or 15 seconds just to like pull threat. I think that would be viable, and it would help out that class a lot, because they get a bad rap because they're not warriors, right? And so they struggle in that regard, but I think they bring good buffs. Like if you have a Druid in your group, they have a 2% crit for melee, and that's like huge. It's fun to play with a Druid, to be honest.
Yeah,
I would say the worst thing, like they're definitely viable in all things that they can do. I just don't like their PvP style, and like that's a big part of the game for me. But I will say, like, hands down the worst thing about them PvE is if you're gonna play a melee, like a physical druid, like you gotta go live in Nomer, and that might drive you insane. So I think if you're gonna be a physical damage dealer kind of druid, it's not for the weak-willed. You got to be committed.
Yeah, for people who don't know out there, Manual Crowd Pummeler is a two-hander that drops, two-handed mace, right, that drops in Nomergon that has 3 charges, and once the charges are gone, it's gone. But basically the green text is when you push the button that activates the mace, your attack speed's increased by, what is it? Is it 20%?
30%?
Okay.
It's a lot. It's a substantial amount.
For 30 seconds.
It's like a kiss of the spider, essentially.
Yeah. And so you have to farm those.
Yes, you have to farm those, and they each take up a slot in your bag. So you can like have a full bag full of pummelers. My only thing is, if you activate it, can you swap back to your weapon, or do you have to use it for the remaining of that buff and then swap back?
I'm not sure. I think that's a question for McKitty
Yeah.
But I mean, even if you could, like, I don't know. It's just like if you're in a not so serious progression guild, like let's say it's like you're in a group of people who've been playing WoW for the first time, like you gotta farm extra pummelers for progression too. Like the farming of pummelers just never stops. It's relentless.
Yeah, it literally never stops. Well, until you get Atiyesh, right? Is that?
I think I think there's a use case where once you get like Atiyesh or something, you don't have to do it anymore. Or it might be a weapon that adds an obscene amount of attack power.
On that, you still want that like snap threat with that MCP. I think that still outweighs an Atiyesh in some situations.
So then you're literally just farming it forever for all eternity. Then.
I think so. You're just kind of hard stuck on that.
even if let's say you get a weapon in AQ40 that replaces it, which I don't know if you do. I don't think you do. Like even if you did though, like you're gonna spend the majority of the game every week farming out multiple crowd pummelers, and it's not a good drop rate. Like it's not horrible, but it's not what you want to see.
Yeah, but the issue with this is that with fresh, like if you roll, this is just throwing it out there, and I think everybody who has played or knows someone who's played Feral knows this. You need to rank and get rank 13 on a Feral Druid, whether you're OTing or just playing Feral. 2, you need to farm pummelers. That's like a must-have, just because of the viability it provides your class, right? Otherwise, you're not going to raid as a Feral. And then 3, you're spending all that time on a fresh server, farming pummelers, and then also ranking. How are you going to get consumes? Because consumables are another thing that you'll need, especially if you're a tank. If you're a Feral tank, you're going to need the same consumes as a warrior.
That's a great point.
I think you're kind of undervaluing like the aspect of like the druid gearing, because you have to consider like phase 1 and 2, like they don't need anything from raid. Like as long as you're staying on top of like with the new honor ranking system, like just getting your cap in each week, like realistically you still have a lot of time on your hands. Like that druid gearing, like it's all in dungeons. Like if you're tanking just like as an off tank, like you really only get Band of Kyria and maybe, a DFT if you're a love druid, and you're kind of set in terms of like gear pre-AQ. Like you don't really get much like as a druid, and I think that's like a benefit. But
it's also kind of a concern too, because you might be coming to raid, pounding consumes, and you're just not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, that's my point. Is like, Chad, I don't disagree. Like I think that their gearing is like I said this. It goes in tangent with warrior. It's like really good to pair a tank, like a Feral tank, with a warrior, because then they don't fight over the same thing, and they provide each other with buffs, essentially. But the only downside is that like it is a lot, especially with this condensed timeline we're gonna have for it's only a year, so it's very condensed, and I think that like Feral Druids will have a hard time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're signing up for.
Turn off.
So, like, all that's great information for people who are considering playing Druid this go around. And that's why I wanted to talk to you guys earlier about it, because I was like, I had like it was more than a nugget. I really wanted to play it, and like I knew about the crowd pummeler thing, and I know like all of the benefits to doing it. But I was like, I even asked Haggard, I was like, tell me I'm on cope wanting to play Feral, and I won't do it. Like, just tell me, like, talk me out of doing it.
I think it's the worst hybrid class when it comes to stuff, because like with Paladin, you have redeemable aspects like the PvP where you're unkillable. You know, some of the times, like 1v1, like when I'm dueling Lumbermill on my warrior, I can't kill him. Like there's rarely if I get that flash set rolling, you know, but Druids, like, I think they really flounder. Like, you know, it doesn't really feel good until you're Biss. Like you watch these Germ videos or these Morpheus videos, and like they're, you know, they're putting in work.
Yeah.
Oh man, like they're such a joy. Like, but they're Biss. You know, they're
shout
taking
them
these
out real quick.
like
what's their YouTube handles? It's,
Morpheus TV
and then Germanicus.
Yeah.
Those guys, if you want some bear inspo, if you're like,
oh my lord,
if you're feeling down and out about yourself, go watch those guys. And
I'm sorry to ruin it for you.
Just think, once you get Biss, you'll be like them.
Yeah, those guys.
I mean, you will.
They rule.
You'll be moving and grooving. So
yeah. They're just constantly running laps around Stormwind. No one can touch them. It's
a fun play style.
Is the guy. Yeah, he laps around Stormwind. I fought him before and could not kill him.
You did? Oh,
yeah.
I wish.
He's too slippery.
Yeah, well, Paladin versus Bear is like the worst matchup ever. Like, I think if the Druid fucks up and doesn't just eventually run away and sign off, then the Paladin wins. But like, that is two wet noodles. Yeah, he's not critting you, so you're not swinging on him. Awful fight.
He's just I need the Druid to want to die, and that's the only way.
And they don't. The smart ones don't choose death; they choose life. And,
they choose life every time.
Yeah, they bear until you're out of mana, and you don't kill them, and then they kill you.
Or if you're lucky, like me, and you intercept into Germanicus and Stormwind when he's out of bear form, and then you like one-shot him. That's the only other time.
I love finding them when they're out of form. That's the best.
And he'll put that in the YouTube videos. You know, he'll show himself getting owned, but he also shows most of the footages of him making an absolute fool of everyone in an entire city, and that's what gets me all fired.
If you want,
yeah.
I think he's a rank 14 Druid with Atiesh, right? If I remember right.
Yeah, he's pretty kitted.
Yeah.
So I mean, go get rank 14 Druids.
I'd say similar vein. You know, they struggle just like a warrior does. Definitely like more than a warrior does in some regards because of like the crazy farms that they have to do to get where they need to go. But it's an investment, and it's, you know, the farm's boring, but the gameplay itself is not boring, especially
yeah. It depends on what version of fun you're seeking, like Rogue, or I think you guys mentioned that like Rogue is kind of like an off-brand Druid, or vice versa, in the sense of like PvP ability, or like just like the desire to have more of them in a raid. Like Druids are kind of like the odd man out. Like if you get in like with your group of homies and you have the opportunity to be the Druid, like you're gonna have a good time and you're gonna get the pieces you want for like PvP. Even like you'll get fed that if you're, you know, the off tank, or, you know, the healer, the soul Druid healer of the raid. But I think it's not very rewarding for a large majority. You have to be a special type of person to enjoy Druid.
Yeah, I think so.
But
not there's anything wrong with that. But
no. I mean, it's just you have to be, you have a touch of tism to just really have that drive to like love something like that. It's just like you paladins, you know.
Oh yeah, we're definitely touched with something.
Paladins.
Yeah, you paladins. You heard me.
We'll get to that because he's not wrong.
Yeah, we'll cover all that and more. So
you say that, but we were just talking about how like the rest of Druid, like if they didn't have a debuff limit, like they could just spam renew and it would be viable.
It'd be great. It would be fun. It would be a fun
99
class to play.
seals every time.
Yeah, we need to get a petition going for Blizzard. You have 4 days. Take it out.
I will say, like, I would hate to look up at the boss and it has like 50 deep wounds on it. Like that would, they'd have to like work on that UI a bit.
It's a bigger change than we're making it out to be, because they would have to have more health on the bosses too, I think.
Yeah. I think that and like dual talent would be like cool changes to have.
Yeah, there's no reason not
massive,
to do that stuff. Especially the debuff limit. There's absolutely no reason not to have it.
I think that debuff limit kind of gets finicky too, because like Lumber mentioned, like the deep wounds, like imagine having 20 warriors in a raid and that deep wounds is rolling for every single warrior. Like that's not a small amount of damage.
No,
like,
they're gonna melt.
Yeah, so I think that affects like clear times as well. So I think, small changes like that, or like the feasibility of like just even like dual talent, it kind of changes like the dynamic of Classic. I
There
think
was
like these
no debuff
limitations
limit
that
in
are
Psalm
set.
though, wasn't there? I'm pretty sure Psalm didn't have a debuff limit.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
think they took that off as well.
they did it already, so they can do it again.
I mean, how'd that turn out though? Did people enjoy
More-
Psalm? Wasn't that player base like
no,
like 4 max rating teams at the end? Like
I think it's like SOD, where you have people that like they absolutely loved it, and I think there's people that just don't, they want nothing to do with that stuff.
Yeah, but there was more changes in Psalm other than, I don't think was anyone bitching about the debuff limit. It did lead to more warrior rogue stacking, but
The only thing I have ever heard really complaining was the day 1 ranking.
yeah, that's not a good idea. And I'm not asking for Psalm. I'm just saying like there's certain things that they could definitely do.
Also, I don't know. I hear this complaint a lot too, was there was no world buffs. But I only hear that complaint from the people who didn't play it because they want to play with world buffs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. I disagree. I think world buffs are fun.
I agree. Like I think
the Chrono Boon solves
everybody together.
Chrono Boon and not being able to purge them, it's like it's solved. Okay, like world buffs are now fun. They sucked in 2019. They sucked in 2004. Chrono Boon solves it, and that's in the game. So why not some of those other things? But yeah, I think having that makes world buffs totally fun and not that big a deal to manage.
It also opens up the door for other, like I hate to say this, but like you put a Ret Paladin with full world buffs, like they're like a mid-class DPS.
A pink parsing,
unironically,
pink parsing Paladin.
They're a blue parsing rogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Ret Paladin hitting 99s is a blue parsing rogue. I've seen it.
I mean, you've proved it. In BWL, you're out DPSing everybody.
Yeah.
Fairly enough.
The dead server.
The dead server.
But
we'll talk about Rogue.
We just brought up Rogue.
Let's go to Rogue.
Let's move on to Rogue because it's kind of been sneaking its way into our conversation anyway.
Yeah.
Life of a Rogue on a fast timeline.
I think it'll be a benefit in terms of like farming and viability for classes. It's probably on the same level as Mage if you guys already spoke about that, but just being self-sustainable and just being able to do your own farms. Like think about like just dire maul farming for like those arcane crystals. I mean, based off like class wise, I mean, warriors can't do it solo. You need to duo that.
Can a rogue do jump runs? I didn't know they could. Are you sure?
No, so they're going in there to like do herbalism.
Oh, okay.
Even like BRD, pickpocketing, like they just have better avenues for farming in terms of like solo ability. They can solo elites a little bit better. Warriors can't do that if you're just like looking at like melee aspects. But in terms of like consumes, it's not as bad as a warrior. But I think this is why I want to choose rogue this go around. I don't want to be a slave to having to put in the time to be like a top DPSer. And this kind of turns into like gear as well. Like if you look at like just viability for getting like a rogue raid ready, like you're getting fed tokens in MC and BWL if you're like 1 of 5 rogues in your guild. You're set.
I'd say their gearing is very much like Hunter, where their tier set is great, their tier 2 is great, their tier 0.5 is great, and then every tier is just phenomenal. So you have a really easy time getting gear. Like you don't have to fight a lot.
It's viable for both PvE and PvP. It's you don't have to chase different areas.
And depending on your faction, if you're Horde or Alliance, and depending if you want to be a sword or dagger guy, like getting weapons can be really easy too. It's really just kind of a ring and neck situation you're gonna have to struggle with. And
picking
bow,
your own fights in PvP, I think, is one of like the biggest draws to it. Obviously, you see some of like the world famous rogues, they're ganking videos and or like their 1v1s. A lot of outs, just like a mage, but they're a melee class.
Yeah, very, very, very few classes can deal with blind into a sprint. Like if you're just wanting to get out of the fight and go away.
Yeah, into a vanish.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest draw to the class is the PvP, especially for me, like not being able to enjoy like melee as like a warrior, only being able to enjoy like the potential of the class in like a PvP or PvE kind of scenario where topping meters is sick, but you're getting slapped out in the open world 9 out of 10 times.
I think rogues kind of get a bad rap in battlegrounds because of just like they're not a warrior, and they're not a flag carrier, and they're an AV. Those big fights, AV, like a rogue is like when there's 40 people around and like a rogue's like on the wrong side of the field, it's like pretty obvious and stuff. But their ability in Warsong and AB, like those smaller fights, to completely shut down a healer on the other side, and eventually you get caught or whatever, and then people start peeling. But like if you can get away with long enough, like if you're a good enough player that you use all your outs, that can rogues can turn a fight in a battleground.
Rogue in open world PvP really likes its cooldowns, and it likes a lot of privacy. It doesn't want third parties showing up necessarily. And in a BG, it's constant warfare. You're always on cooldown, and there's always third parties showing up. Sometimes fourth, fifth, and sixth parties. But that said, like they're one of the best like harassers in a game. Like in AB, they can flip flags that are being poorly guarded. They can completely shut down healers on the other side of the battlefield. They're great at guarding flag rooms and things like that. Like they're a very necessary class, but it's a dirty job, and somebody's got to do it, and the rogue is the perfect candidate.
Yeah, I would. One thing I would like to add is that I generally think that a lot of rogues are selfish.
Here we go.
I would agree.
Get them.
I'm just saying it how
they're off doing their own thing.
Most rogues are very selfish, and because I think it promotes that ganking kind of griefing type of mentality when you're a rogue, because it's so easy to do it, right? Like when you're in tier 1 and everybody else is in tier 1, like when this new era comes out, like rogues tier 1 will fuck shit up in PvP. It is really good, especially if you get yourself some new nice daggers, like a core hound or even the one off Ragnaros. I forgot the name. Purd's blade. Yeah, if you can get that combination right there, that gear is set for like all the way up to AQ40, unless you can get your 0.5 or like tier 2 or whatever.
Oh,
but
0.5 is huge for rogues.
Yeah, but we don't get that until AQ20, so that's the only issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but like realistically, short term, like we're gonna be getting it within like a couple months, and like the farmability of it, like
it'll be almost a year, Chad. 10 months, phase 5.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to tell you. Is like this gear, like this thing is like this is fast tracking era, so like it's gonna be weird. But what I was trying to say is that like I think that because with all this, like with their ability to like on their cooldowns, right? They save their cooldowns to basically 1v1 somebody. And they control that 1v1, and I think it caters toward being a greedy player, like you're playing for yourself. And I think that like it carries over into BG sometimes, and especially in Warsong Gulch when I'm like getting ganked by 2 people and the rogue is just still in stealth, kind of circling around. Yep. You can see him in stealth circling around, not CCing the healer or like not trying to help me or like kidney shot somebody who's like ganking me from behind. Like it's it just drives me crazy because I feel like they don't bring anything else to the table other than to get a kill for themselves.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So many times I've been healing a BG, and then there's like a friendly rogue off just watching me get fucking attacked by God knows what, and he's just like, I'll sit this one out. My cooldowns aren't up.
My cooldowns aren't up, so I'll just sit back. I'm on Boon, so I can do that.
I don't want to affect my KD.
So dungeon set 0 in their previous, not 0.5. It still has that set bonus, but it's now 6 pieces instead of 4. Is that too much? You're losing too much? Because I know rogues don't struggle for hit at all. So,
well, you don't get hit from that. So there's no hit percent on the 0.
Yeah, I know, but like the rogue's natural talents.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is like it's not worth it once it turns into that 6 piece because you're sacrificing that like 2 extra slots of gear. Yeah, I think for rogue, like especially their tier stuff, like doesn't like their helmet like off of Onyxia have like 2% hit off of it or something, but yeah, like rogues and hunters are just so well off, like in terms of hit. Like they're just good, but especially that 0.5 set, like it doesn't really offer a lot in terms of
stats.
You know, like phase 1 through 4, but it's a good set to farm out early on while you're doing those like previous grinds. Like don't vend those pieces. They're going to be very valuable. But
another thing is, I was gonna say, like, gearing's all well and good on a rogue, but like they have set damage on some of their abilities, so like you don't necessarily need great gear to kill people. Like that blue set will be just fine. You know, in a world where nobody has raid gear, like you're still gonna be mulching people.
Yeah.
You can be like in your 50s and still 1v1 a 60 and win. That's just how good rogues are.
Just stun lock and beat them down. There's nothing you can do sometimes against a rogue. I had a 59 twink and was stomping AQ geared people with like previous. Like you're kind of set as a rogue, and I think that's a very alluring part of them is just like the ease of entry. Like there's a very low barrier to just kind of have fun in PvP.
Yeah,
that's
even
kind of what Lumber was saying is like the selfish rogue. It's totally true. You just want to go off and do your own thing because you can, and you're having fun while you're doing it. But
even in like even on White Mane on Era, where we're in a phase 6 world, like even if you just started a rogue today and he got to level 60, like because you can stealth and pick your fights, you don't have to fight the Giga Chad Nax geared, you know, mage. You could like wait for like some other small potato to roll by you and take that guy out. So like just because you can pick your fights, you can always have a fun time. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, that leads to the what I told you, Lumber. Like every time I hear that stealth noise, you just pop in faps now.
Yep.
Pop in faps.
Yeah, it works.
They'll leave you alone.
Yep.
Yeah. That was a big brain play that or strat that Lumber gave us. And I've been doing it ever since.
I got that from Brew.
As soon as you hear the sound, the rogue sound, pop the fap.
As soon as you hear a
terrible.
Sound, I pop a fap and they never gank me.
Well, know.
That's the most schizophrenic thing you can do to somebody.
You can't.
You're in Black Rock
That needs to be like a Discord sound now, just playing that.
That'll freak you out,
yeah.
I mean, you're in Black Rock Mountain at like 11:30 at night, and you hear that sound, and you just glug glug glug. You will not deal with that rogue.
Yeah, I mean that's a more viable strat on phase 6 classic era than it's going to be in
that's true.
On a fresh
you
server.
can't do that. You need a buddy.
So don't use that lumber mill method just anywhere.
That's brew method, by the way.
Okay.
I learned it from him.
Okay, all right.
I learned
didn't know that.
you.
That's good. It's out in the
put
open
some
now.
respect on his name.
Yeah, you could also get Mask of the Unforgiven. I was just thinking about their gearing, like, because Rogue is just, they get so many different pieces from, like, you can go True Strike Shoulders as well. You can get Mask of the Unforgiven from Strat. There's just a lot of options, to be honest.
Yeah. 4% right there. It's huge. I mean, it's a warrior without being a leather daddy. Like, you're not cringe by wearing the leather gear. It's, that previous grind is pretty accessible. Like, you're not, I wouldn't say you're not necessarily contested for some pieces, but like when you're in Ubers or, I mean, even in BRD, you're kind of like against the warriors for, kind of that like first grind of the game. So, but it depends on where you value your time. Like consumable farming for rogues is like a huge thing. Like a lot of like those classes are like herbalists, and I think that's you're going to have an easier time like playing rogue or mage. Like whereas warriors are going to be sweaty, or druids are kind of on the same level as like a warrior or rogue, where you have to put the time in, but it's not a lot of reward.
Something else about rogue is I think it might be unique to them, where I don't think there's a bad racial choice. Like I think every class that can be a rogue it has like its strengths. Like I don't think there's a bad pick like say there is for priest, or warrior.
No.
I mean, think about Night Elf. Any redeemable facts? I mean,
yeah, they can't. You have better stealth. They can't detect you as easily. So
you do
it's
stealth without
who gets the opener wins. So you've got to. If you're an Night Elf rogue, you put on those stealth detection goggles. You're gonna find them before they find you.
It's actually a good point. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, they're increased stealth. They also have increased dodge as Night Elf. So it's like 1% or something, but nothing.
I think hardiness is just biz, dude. Like
it's really good.
there's
there's
a reason Bobka is an orc.
Oh, I remember I mean, I haven't been able to win a duel against him. I mean, but I'm a warrior, screw me. Like, that's, fat chance, buddy. But, our fabled Pint, always call back to that video. I think that's your proudest moment is beating Babka,
I still have that video.
Did you land a stun on him? Like,
Yep.
that racial is very undervalued. I think if you're going to roll rogue, like Orc or Undead is just huge for the PvP ability. Like, Undead, it's so nice with your racial of getting rid of fears. It eliminates a lot of like 1v1 scenarios, especially against like Warlocks. Like you're kind of in your own
some of your weaker points as a rogue.
Yeah, it helps you out a lot. I mean, you rogue, you're just escaping most things. It's a good class to just be off on your own. You're not reliant like warrior or, squishier classes. You can get out and you're fine.
Is a dwarf storm form essentially good for fighting other rogues?
Yeah, you can break
Oh
their
yeah,
lines.
I use it.
I think
Use
it's
it all
a little
the
bit
time.
more. Do you really?
Oh, I use it all the time.
Okay, I mean, I guess I haven't like rolled a dwarf yet, so I didn't really know like the better aspects of rolling it. But it seems like it's a little bit more on the value scale, just not necessary. Like when it comes to like when you look at humans, like a man like raiding with swords or like that just helps a lot with like damage at least. But
yeah, I'd say for rogue, humans better.
I was gonna say like if you pick dwarf and you try to play a sword rogue, I think you're probably doing it wrong.
Yes, I mean swords in our guild, Maladath. Remember that?
Take the advantage you have of being the dwarf is not needing to go.
What do you mean?
Yeah, like stone form for like a paladin is great. Stone form for a warrior is great. I don't see it with the rogue.
And then you're immune to their poisons for like how many seconds? So if they have crippling on you, like you're getting to them.
Yeah.
In any case, I'm excited to see some of the griefers. Because there will be griefers come fresh.
I mean, that's what I plan on doing.
I'm excited
not the same aspect of grief.
I'm excited to be the griefers.
Griefing.
Going straight to Red Ridge.
That's what I'm saying, dude. As soon as I'm like ahead of the curve at level 30, I'm going to Red Ridge. I'm making the Alliance pay for what was done to me. It's
make
past
Mini
due.
Bag proud.
That's right.
It's funny that we're all Alliance players that are just so sick and tired of the Alliance that we can't wait to kill them. Can't wait to kill them.
I just wish that I could play Pally on Horde.
We're all gonna have the same names, and they're all gonna come and kill us.
Yep, they'll know.
Yeah.
Comment in the video if you've been killed by Mini Bag in Red Ridge. I need to know.
What about Cryptic? Do you remember that?
I remember that name, but I don't remember him. If that makes any sense.
Got you.
I think it's funny that like the people who torture us have like kind of become famous. That we like remember all their names. Like I mean, some of them like Bob, because obviously is like a a big content creator, but like there's plenty of people on my my list, little Excel document I got of people I hate.
Speaking of world griefers, why don't we jump into Lorm and our shamans?
Absolute powerhouses in PvP.
And they're like brain dead powerhouses too. That's the best bit. Like...
Not uncommon in later game to see Shaman at the top of the KB's list, because like it's not even like an AoE. Chain Lightning's not even like necessarily an AoE. Like it jumps and it jumps hard to other targets, and like it's insane. Like their deletion ability. Like they can. It's not a one shot, but it damn near is.
You're like a mage that wears heavy armor and has a cleave spell that just kills people.
Yeah, you're in mail armor. So like you're second tankiest. You could very easily swap into a shield, and then like you're just like a little bit less armor than a warrior, and you're stacking hella fucking spell power, popping trinkets, and blowing people the fuck out of the stratosphere.
I mean, you do focus on stacking crit as a shaman, because the more crit, the more burst you have. But yeah, spell power does scale with. They have really good spell powers coefficients, and like Chain Lightning and like Lightning Bolt, these are your essential spells, especially in PvP. This is all PvP speaking for Shaman, because I'll be honest, like Enhancement Shaman 2 can do some serious damage. Like I've seen Enhancement Shamans like one shot people. Yeah, they're really powerful as well. Like they're a dangerous class overall. Yeah, they have Chain Lightning and they also have Storm Strike. So there's a few things.
And just their Fire Nova totem into the Wind Fury weapon, into the they have some serious burst. It's a little wonky and you need shit to land right, but they can one shot too.
I was about to say, just them being able to drop a Wind Fury totem for their friends is huge. That's a ton of damage.
Yeah, and that's your group will like you more because the elementals don't drop the Wind Fury as much because they're focusing on their own like chain of abilities that they need to get out. And you know, like, you don't even necessarily want an elemental dropping those. You want them thinning out the herd so you can win that battle.
Yeah, I'll be honest, most of the time the shamans, like at least who I PvP with on my shaman, like they don't necessarily drop their Wind Fury unless they have a warrior who's like ready to jump in there and do some serious damage. So like sometimes you'll have like a group of 2 people, like 2 warriors in your group, and then you'll drop Wind Fury and you'll be unbeatable. Like they're just so good with Wind Fury, and they have so much damage output, and then you can just do Chain Lightning. But in terms of fresh and like gearing wise, Shaman is an attractive class as well. You're literally going for tier 1. Like that's what you're doing. You're getting pre-biz and then you're getting tier 1. Like, and tier 1 is seriously good for not only for healing, but it's good for damage as well. Like it has some damage power on their healing gear.
The set bonus for PvP aspects, like the set bonuses, are like nothing to shake your head out. The increased range on the totems, that's like the first one. Isn't that like 2 or 3 set bonus? 30 yards. So very minimal gearing wise to maintain that set bonus, and a huge value add because like your job in raid is your totems. That's your primary objective, so that's a massive value add for very little gearing.
Yeah, essentially your raid composition is you have a shaman in every melee group to drop earth totem, which provides strength, and then Wind Fury, which gives you Wind Fury, and that's what you want to have in your melee groups to give the most damage output. Shamans overall are just good to have because they have onks, which is they can, if you have like a wipe, you can basically come back to life with multiple healers and then bring everybody back to life, right? So it's like having a warlock. You don't like wipes is a little bit easier to take care of, and then 2, like chain heal is just as powerful as chain lightning. Like chain heal is like top meter healing. It's really good, and it jumps to the other people who have less health as well. So
tier 1 set bonusing also has a jump. It's like a lot less powerful.
When they jump to other people to heal, like it finds people who need the heal. It won't just like find a person that's 100% health. Like that's what makes it so good. It's like you're always getting value.
That's awesome.
Yes. And what makes it even better is once you get your 3-piece tier 2, because it increases the heal of your jumped chain heal by 30%.
That's awesome.
Is there ever a scenario where you drop Grace of Air over Wind Fury? Is that a thing?
So when you're totem twisting, you do that. You drop Grace of Air, and then you switch back to Wind Fury.
So you get both. Okay.
Yes.
Do people do that? Because you've been playing Shaman. Do they?
Yes.
Is that like a thing?
People. Yeah, they do totem twisting when they do like Nax and stuff. But I don't do that in generic raiding because like the raids are. I'm just from my experience, the raids have not been as clean as Alliance. But if you have like a sweaty guild, they do totem twisting. Yes.
And they want you to do that. Like they would rather you get your twist off. And prioritize that over the heal.
Yeah, it depends, right? It depends on your group. I think it also depends on your melee if they're like really good or not, and if they're parsing. If they're parsing, absolutely. And you also have shamans who will spec into enhancement to get improved totems. So if you have to do that, you have like less healing ability, and then you're basically just dropping your totems, and that's what your job is.
Yeah, so that's got to be a huge consideration for people who are considering to rolling it. They're pretty much always going to be healers. Enhancement does better damage than like a rep paladin, I think, but also they're not. It's a meme spec.
We need to talk about that. Enhancement, I think, is like not a good main character, but like if you just want to mess around and have fun, I think it's a good alt. But they have some problems. Like their gearing is very schizophrenic, kind of like Paladin is. They don't wear plate, so they have a hard time getting access to the stats that they would want as a melee damage dealer. So they have to settle for leather, or they have to wear mail, which is more statted for like hunters typically. So they don't have like the attack power you'd really want. There are some mail pieces in the game that are perfectly statted, but
and this is specifically enhancement, by the way.
Yeah, you end up with like this weird clown suit.
Yeah.
And then like Wind Fury back in the day, like you can find those videos where Unbreakable is just one tapping people. He's playing with a version of Wind Fury that was pre-nerf. And in the game we're playing, the attack power of Wind Fury was cut in half. So you're doing far less damage than what that guy would be doing back in 2005. you can definitely kill casters with that class, no problem. But against melee classes like Paladin, Rogue, Warrior, you're probably gonna have a bad time. That's been my experience with it.
Yeah, I think it just depends as well. Like I've seen, there's definitely I don't remember the name of this shaman, but I was watching him. I think his name's Sangor or something like that. He had a few YouTube videos of him in PvP. He was using like full. He had a Mitamanithil, like a lot of Nax gear, so he was 2.5 gear, which is good for So he was dropping like totems and getting like big storm strike crits. So he was really bursty, to be honest, but he was not one shotting warriors or like other plate dealers.
Yeah.
But he was dealing a lot of damage to like leather. Like I see him to like 1v3 people too. So he does like enhancement is fun. Don't get me wrong. That might be one of the most fun classes in the game.
And if enhance is your goal, you have to rank.
What's funny is like I remember as a teenager like killing shadow priests all the time with my enhancement shaman, and then I all the time I'd hear about how like broken shadow was. And I just did not understand. Like it's kind of funny how geared they are to kill like caster classes, the totems and the purges, and then the high burst damage all of a sudden.
Yeah,
it can be a lot of fun.
In the video I was watching with this shaman, he was doing like this. He was like trying to get I don't know if it was Wind Fury procs or like they get clear casting as a shaman, so they were trying to they were spec'd into this enhancement build where they would try and get clear casting procs from crits, right? And by doing that you get a free use. So he would like switch to his Mitamanithil to get a crit, right? And then use that crit to hit with chain lightning.
I like it.
Shit.
So he was like switching. It was like almost like a hybrid build. It was really funny, like really fun to watch. But
that's the kind of stuff I like in the game, where you're using all your abilities and thinking outside the box.
Yeah, he was like switching between like using like a one-hander with spell damage and then going into Mitamanithil and like whacking him. So it was funny.
I think we've said pretty much everything there is to say about Shaman for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do we got next? Oh, Jesus Christ! The last one.
Let's just glaze over how good this class is for the next 30 minutes.
Well, yeah.
Paladin?
Yeah, I think everyone here has a Paladin.
No.
I think it's a Paladin alt or a main.
Best class in the game.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I have a separate account. My Jaw Paladin account.
It's the most boring shit I've ever played, man.
Seriously.
I think we'll start off with the good.
I think we should start with the bad.
There's not a whole lot.
Let's just let go through the good. Let's hear the good.
Okay, so one of the things I love about Paladin is like the leveling is slow, but it is so steady. You don't die. There are no graveyard walks unless you deserved it. Most elite quests that are meant to be for a group, you can solo as a Paladin, no problem, just like you would any other mob in the game. It's, if you want to be antisocial and just kind of like run through the game and not group, like you can definitely do that as a Paladin. They just have such good sustain. They can heal themselves. They wear heavy armor. It's low damage, but it's consistent. And it just allows them to walk through so much stuff. They have a dozen different buttons that save them. They have all these like sort of oh shit buttons in the moment. You can just press it and then the fight swings back your way. Yeah, one of the biggest complaints that people have about classic era PvP is the CC durations and the diminishing returns involving those. And the Paladin class is a class that can definitely just like cut right through that stuff, where mages really depend on being able to polymorph their opponents. Well, if a Paladin's around, polymorph is not happening. Roots and snares, they're not happening. Even like things like saps and stuns can be broken by a Paladin. They can hand out, temporary immunity to physical damage to other characters. They can, res other players. They can prevent players from dying during a wipe in a raid. Sort of like how a Warlock would soul stone someone, they can instead preserve someone's character. They just never die. They're taken out of the fight. And they have Lay on Hands, which is a massive heal that instantly happens that, can even increase a player's armor by 20%. They're the class that has all these buttons that completely save other players. They're not a bad healer either. They're a little brain dead in that department. You're kind of just hitting one button nonstop for the next 2 hours or however long your raid is until you have to hit the other button, Cleanse. So they're pretty boring in that regard, but I mean, If you
can
want
make
to
a lot of
suit,
plays with the class, you know,
if,
there's so many times where Pint or Lumber has saved my ass in a raid, like 10% or less health. Like a lot of Paladins play on autopilot, you know, kind of what you're mentioning, where you're only, you know, pushing really blends, Flash of Light or Holy Light, not, you know, rarely, but it's you can be a huge value if you're really involved in just making sure your raid is just staying afloat, like you mentioned with like bopping somebody. I mean, you constantly saving people from dying, like druids, shamans, priests. Like no other class has like the lifeguard effect that like a paladin has. I think that's why like alliance raiding is enticing a lot of times. Is like these paladins have like a lot of these buffs and just like this cushion. You know, there's no like raw effect of like accidentally ripping threat with like a Wind Fury totem like on Alliance. It's
being able to
you're
funnel
there.
threat into the tanks too.
Yeah, like you throw
salve.
salve on the warriors, you're fine. You know, don't rip threat. Like there's nothing of concern when you're like a paladin healer almost. I mean, you're not like topping meters like a priest can, but it's you're really good inside of a raid for healing. Outside of it though, it's I mean, PvP is rewarding. I mean, Lumber can talk about that. You'd love that shit.
Another thing about Paladin PvE before we get to PvP is like every raid is going to take 3 to 4 of you, sometimes 5 if they're down a healer and they just need to fill space. And that's because each paladin can assign a buff to the entire raid. The last 15 minutes, and these are, I want to say, like game-changing buffs where, you know, Horde has to really worry about threat, where Alliance don't. It's, you know, we're playing on easy mode when it comes to threat. We put on a buff and it reduces, it effectively increases the threat that the tank is producing by 30%, which is substantial. There's a buff that increases your all your stats by 10%, which is almost like a world buff by itself. Then you have another buff that increases attack power by, I think,
180
200 or 300.
base. Yeah, 180 base, and then you get the improved one, and I think it's over 200.
Yeah, and then you know we have a buff that's more for us paladins that increases our healing on you. More serious guilds usually opt to not take that buff, and so they'll roll back the number of paladins in their raid to 3 rather than 4. There's also a 5th buff, which is probably the least popular and probably the least influential in how the raid's going to operate, which is in the protection tree, Blessing of Sanctuary. It just decreases the incoming damage that the player would take. Yeah, so it's not very big deal. And then, you know, if the raid's taking damage, you know, chances are you're doing something wrong. So that buff is just not necessary.
Yeah.
Pint, you got anything to add?
I hate healing. It's an extremely rewarding class in PvP.
How's like the gearing in terms of like phase 1 and 2? I mean, it seems like you get a lot of your stuff out of like previous grind, like you're
just
a
like
leather and like cloth kind of wearing class. Unfortunately, you're just chasing plus healing. But I think that's pretty beneficial. Like you're really only, I mean, you don't get much out of MC, do you? Like you don't have much to look forward to. Like your stuff is in dungeons.
Shoulders and a ring and the
there's 2 or 3 items that you would want from a raid in Molten Core. There's Mage Blade, Cauterizing Band, which you can wear 2 of. I think Salamander Scale. Yeah, Salamander Scale pants. I think they're called Living Shoulders.
You can go a crit set with like the chest of the Mage chest as well. That's pretty nice.
There's the Robe of Volatile Power, I think it's called. I prefer the blue dress from Ubers. I prefer the blue dress.
That one's still better. I use the leatherworking one instead of the dress.
Red Dragon Scale.
Yeah.
Does that come out in phase 1? I don't know.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
I believe that's a pattern that drops out of Ubers, so it should just be accessible.
Probably. Yeah. That's a really good one. If you sometimes farming that dress in strat is a nightmare because it drops off the, I think, second to last or the last boss, right?
It's the absolute last boss. You're there for 20-30 minutes at least.
You can't just grab, you just can't grab 4 of your friends and like go target farm a boss. You know, you got to go do that whole dungeon over and over again.
My thing about Paladin is that when you're leveling and you're leveling red, it's fun, but when you start to make that shift to raiding, you have to alter your what gear you can get. So you're almost better off just starting to get healing gear early on, and then finding a group of people you can dungeon spam with or like quest with, and just being their pocket healer. Because the sooner you get used to the fact that you're going to be doing that in the raid, the better it is for your mental health.
Oh no.
If you think you can be a Retribution Paladin and then go into raid and then be upset that you're not getting specific gear for Retribution Paladin, that's the start of your downfall.
You're in for a bad time.
Yeah, so I think it's good to get into the routine of like, okay, like I'm really good at being a pocket healer. Like I heal tanks. That's what I do, right? So when you do that, and then you go into like pre-biz farm and you're getting all your healing gear, you know that your job is just going to be healing from now on until you get to a point where everybody has their best in slot for that phase, and then you can start getting DPS gear.
And with this accelerated timeline, like I don't think there's enough time in the game for you to like get those off pieces that you would normally want, which a warrior would need.
But good news, you could do ranking, and ranking gear is decently good for Rep Paladin.
Oh, it's I would say more than decent. It's very, very good. Let's talk about. Hang on, real quick. Let's think about.
How about time investment for a paladin?
Just talking about tier 1, like, so like their tier 1 isn't good for PvE healing, but it's also not. It's not the worst for PvP, but it's also
like the best at the time. It's like the best you can do at the time.
Paladin is a class that needs every single stat basically in the game to work.
And rank gear is the first set that like kind of becomes available to you that has every stat.
Yeah. Oh, I think we might be approaching this wrong. When I'm talking about PvP, I'm talking about Ret, and yeah, Ret needs like every stat. Holy needs like stam and healing power, maybe some crit. That's it. And unfortunately, like tier 1 doesn't have that for either of those builds. Tier 2, it's again kind of like. It's not ideal, but you can kind of make it work for healing with healing off pieces.
There will be some upgrades in that just because of the lack of gear from the fast timeline that like tier 2 is probably you're gonna find some upgrades in tier 2 just because of how the game's rolling out.
Yeah. Tier 2 can kind of work for Ret with if you splash in some off pieces like Crown of Destruction. Maybe by then you can probably get a pair of Flame Guard gauntlets out of the Fury Warriors. You might be able to get a Therasane Link from Nefarian. You might be able to get an Ashgandi or a Spinal Reaper.
Lumbermill,
I don't think
encouraging you're setting a bad example for the children.
Propaganda. Dude. Seriously.
I really think like if you want to play Ret, or if you want to put any number of points in Ret, like you need to really do the rank 14 grind. The first 2 phases are just rough, I think, for Paladin and even PvE, PvP, regardless of spec. I think it's just rough. Because you're mostly in PvE. If you're gonna play a healer, you're mostly just gonna be wearing your dungeon blues and whatever pieces you can get out of Molten Core. Like you're probably gonna have to fight mages and warlocks for a mage blade if you're allowed to roll on it. There's gonna be like 9 other healers wanting those cauterizing bands. And probably 5 or 6 people wanting those leather leggings and leather shoulders. So it's gonna be a dogfight for that kind of stuff. So you're really gonna be rocking your Prebis all the way into ZG, I think. This time
I wore my pre-raid blues all the way to max in Skyline.
Well, yeah.
But you weren't full.
You still have some on too, huh?
In terms of, I would say in terms of like early gearing though, like for a Holy Paladin to like be raid ready, Chad was hinting at this earlier. You do kind of have it easy because there's a lot of high spell power, or not spell power, healing power gear that's available in the dungeons that you just end up wearing for a long time. And Robes of the Exalted, that's like 70 healing power that comes out of a dungeon. Like that's...
I don't think I took those off until I got my chest piece out of Nax. I don't think.
Yeah, like it's just like
I
one
just
of the
wore
best
that thing
items
forever
in the game. So you become raid viable, even like because your mana to a Holy Paladin because of illumination. Every time you crit, you get healing back. So you just end up being like a lot more less mana dependent than other classes. So like you pair that with like your flask of distilled wisdom, and you're good. So you don't prioritize like intellect, or you just want to get that one number as high as possible in the early game, and you just end up having a lot of options to do it. Yeah, and also like you can definitely like take some greens for off pieces that have high spell power. There's like of the healing greens out there that end up being like really well statted.
I do think, like, even though I've been talking about Rhett this whole time, like I really do think if my life depended on it and I had to like win a 1v1 tournament, I really think playing Deep Holy with some points in either Rhett or Prot would be the way I'd do it. I think Holy is like probably the most powerful incarnation of the class. If you have people there who are worth healing, it's rough to play a support class when there's no one worth supporting, which it can be difficult to find a community to play in that, you know, wants to PvP, especially if you play Alliance. Like, it's a bunch of guys that want to parse on Warcraft logs over there. They don't really care about, you know, getting exalted with Warsong or AB. The other spec Prot can actually be a lot of fun. You can do that in dungeons and 5-mans. And my 2019 experience was pretty much tanking all of my own runs for my healing gear.
Yeah, I did
and having to help.
Same
yeah,
thing.
and I had to help a significant portion of my guild by tanking their runs. Our warriors were trapped in Ubers farming Dal Rens day and night, so there just were no tanks. It was you took a Paladin tank or you just, you know, did without.
And Paladin tanking in dungeons is actually like super good. You can get
Yeah.
away with pulling a lot of stuff.
Ironically, it's the worst experiences when you're doing the undead dungeons where you should shine.
'Cause you
Most of
go-
the stuff in there has like a silence or an aggro drop, so your team just has to be aware.
Or a mana burn.
Yeah.
Or a mana burn.
Oh, I forgot about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I just double seal of wisdom usually and straight undead. But
Downrank your
you have-
consecrate, go for it.
You have the gear for it. If you like when you get spell power, that's, you know, when tanking those dungeons becomes easier. But it's also like usually when you start getting spell power gear, you're not doing the dungeons as much anymore because you probably already have that stuff.
When you get your tier 2, you become like an AoE grinding machine, similar to a mage. You're not as good at it, but I mean, you're one of the few classes in the game that can fight 50 like level 50 mobs at a time.
Dire Maul jump runs. You can solo that one undead boss to do jump runs and go do that. What is that? The arcane crystal farm.
Oh yeah.
You go holy shock and you just kite that undead boss around and you can exorcism him, and then he does this one ability where like he CCs you in front of the center of the room and like starts doing a bunch of damage to you. You can bubble out of that. So you can.
There's a lot of farming potential with Paladin's AoE ability. I mean, you can do boosts for people. They can pay you to level them for them. There's the grinding. You just doing raw gold on AoE grinds, or, you know, doing jump runs for herbs and things like that.
You can do Scarlet Monastery 2 pulls, where like you pull like the everything but the boss room and then the entire boss room. It's like 2 pulls, and Paladin can do that in vanilla.
I have not done it yet, but you can also do Mara boosts. I think you're only doing like maybe 200 or 300 mobs instead of like the 500 a mage can do. Yeah. But I mean, people pay a lot of money for that.
Holy Wrath, yeah, like a big ass. It's on a long cooldown, but like you pair that with your consecrate and you have like decent AoE on undead targets.
Going for Rhett and PvE, just don't do it.
Yeah.
In 5-mans, it's fine, but like in a raid environment, like no. Maybe if at the end of the day you come back, you know, you've got all the gear you would ever possibly need to do Rhett, then you can try it out and have fun with it. But don't join a progression guild as a Rhett Paladin and siphon off loot from people. Don't do it. Everyone's gonna hate you, including the Paladins. And the only reason you're there in the first place is out of pity. Like, just don't be that guy.
You're better off actually rolling healer and then seeing if you can roll on specific DPS gear.
Yeah, that's what I did. I pretty much started trading healing gear for ret gear.
Going back to like your job is healing, like I think like a more important job than healing in a weird way is actually those buffs. Like, if you have those buffs up at 100% uptime, like no one ever has to say I need kings or I need salve, like you're doing a great job. There's nothing worse than having to stop a run because we don't have salve up or we don't have kings up or we don't have might up. It's annoying.
It's also like why you're there. It's the whole point. You know, like your heals really aren't shit. You're there to keep the tanks alive, but the buffs last 15 minutes. There's no reason to be like popping those in combat.
Yeah, if the raid wanted heals, they'd bring another priest. Not that Paladin healing is bad, it's just priest is better.
The problem with like the buff situation with salvation is you could have salve on other groups, and then some groups might not have salve, and because you have salve, it causes a threat situation where you start to lose threat by like from other groups who don't have it. Whereas in like if you're in horde, like since there's no one using the that specific totem that reduces your threat, like everybody, it's basically
Cool
like
area, I think.
it's a little bit more controlled in that sense. So like the buff actually means a lot. If you don't have salvation on, you could really fuck up like a raid.
Yeah, and that's why they're usually, if you find yourself in your guild of people you know in a long time and they are always only putting you on Blessing of Light and you're never on Salve or Kings, they probably think you're retarded or something.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I mean,
those three matter more than anything else.
And the funny thing is, I never understood. A lot of people like get offended when you ask them to be assigned a salve.
yeah. Well, it's weird because like most paladins I played with seem to have like their favorite buff, which I don't
Yeah.
understand. And they're like, no, I'm the might guy. And it's like, why? Like, who cares? It's just a button, brother. Like, who cares?
I think it comes down to speccing, where they'd like forgo other talents to get might, so then them not. I don't understand it in like a GDKP or something, but if you're in a guild and you're like assigning buffs out to people so that you're not wasting a bunch of extra talent points, I could see like where like someone might be like, well, I spec'd into might, I was told to spec into might, I've been doing this every week, I'm the might guy.
But I mean, through the Pally Power add-on, you can tell exactly how they spec. So you and the add-on's smart enough to detect what their talents are invested in. So it will make 9 times out of 10 it will make the correct decision for you. But if it doesn't, you can just quickly look off to the left and see like, oh, is this correct? Yes, no.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've been in so many raids where like the paladin just refuses. He's like, no, I do kings. And it's just like, oh, come on, man. Yeah. Don't be like that guy. It sucks. Nobody likes him. But yeah, these first couple phases, like if you have any kind of aspirations of going ret, like for PvP, even in PvE, like get as much plus healing as you can, put on as much armor, as much stamina, and then go to the battlegrounds and heal people and freedom warriors. Like that's how you're gonna get your ret gear. That's the fastest way, and it's not gonna be painful at all. And
PvP gear is not horrible. Like the martial gear is not horrible for healing either. Like so if you're like struggling to get into a group or whatever, just go rank, and then eventually you'll have like decent enough healing gear.
If you don't include set bonuses, the martial gear has way more spell power than 2.5.
I was gonna say like if you compare rank 13 to tier 2, it's pretty samey. It's just tier 2 has a little more spell power, I think, but the martial gear has agi, which is also armor or dodge or crit chance. So you might actually be more survivable
and
overall.
It has crit and strength on it too.
Yeah.
That being said, you should get your pre-biz.
Yeah. The first couple phases, it's just rough. It sucks, but even if you want to be like a deep holy Chad, like you don't get that plate healing gear for quite a while.
Yeah.
I still don't have that plate healing gear.
I think the last thing I'd have to say about Paladin is like if you want to play a Paladin, like you got to have some thick skin. It doesn't matter if you're holy or ret. Like people are gonna make fun of you. Like they're gonna tell you to put on the dress or heal you, or they're gonna try to make you out to be a bitch, or try to clown on you for playing what you want to play. Just take it in stride. Don't pay attention to it. Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
I hate to see you win.
They hate to see it, man.
Usually when Lumber and I argue about like different Paladin things, he's like approaching it as from the perspective of like being the Paladin that enables other people that everyone likes, and I come at it from the perspective of trying to be that and getting so disgruntled and frustrated with everyone else that I'm like, fuck that, I'm gonna worship the kill meter and we'll just see who has like the last laugh. Both
one more thing
are definitely viable.
When it comes to Paladin, you can play Dwarf or Human. I really think Dwarf is the best pick for a Holy Paladin. And I think Human's the best for, more of a Ret Paladin. Human has a bonus to hit with maces and swords, which really works well for Ret. While Holy, that stone form, when you pop that stone form, you can bop, and you'll be immune to a lot of the shenanigans that Rogue can do. And Rogues are one of the number one classes that are going to bother you in a battleground or in a world PvP scenario. And having one more thing in your toolkit that can keep them from harassing you while you're healing your teammates is huge. And the second thing is Stone Form increases your armor by 10%, I believe.
Yep.
So when you take that improved lay on hands talent, you can increase your own personal armor by 30%. So, when it gets down to the wire, a dwarf paladin who has 30% armor, who can heal himself with a rank 1 heal, and heal a quarter of his life every time he does that. It's huge. Like you can survive.
They're unironically good flag carriers.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah.
Holy God, that's another thing too. Back in 2019, during phase 2, my guild had problems getting into Blackrock Mountain because they're the alliance were just being slaughtered and farmed for honor. But a paladin, you've got bubble, and bubble's on a 5-minute cooldown and makes you immune to everything for 12 seconds. Skull of Impending Doom is on a 5-minute cooldown and gives you a 60% movement speed buff. So you can bubble and Skull of Impending Doom, and then you can FAP, so drink a potion, be immune to movement pairing effects and stuns, nifty stopwatch, right? And then if you have rocket boots, you can pop those and then pop a freedom, which makes you immune to makes you immune to snares and slows. So you've got 30 or 40 seconds of speed boosts, and for the majority of it,
you're immune.
Most classes cannot stop you. You cannot be contained. So you can speed past a lot of bullshit as a paladin. And the bubble hearth ability has saved me so many world buffs. It's got me out of so many jams. Like trying to go get Dark Moon Fair and Mulgore, Horde don't even bother. They know this guy's gonna just bubble and leave. But it's a very, very useful ability. It will save you a lot of headache if you use it appropriately.
Worst part about Paladin is playing Alliance.
That is the absolute worst part, yeah.
That is true, yep. I really wish I could roll Pally on Horde, but it is what it is.
Hate to love them, love to have them.
There you go. Well, I think that's a podcast. Thanks to Brewnasty, Pint, Chad for popping in. Thanks for being on the show. Really carrying the class walkthrough. I think we got a lot of good information out of it.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Nilly.
Yeah, thanks for having me.